Chapter 2820. This beast was brought by Ping Xinghai. So this person was naturally from Ping Xinghai as well. The black-clothed man took 4 steps towards Ping Xinghai, reaching out with his hand to grab Ling Han. Everyone, let's charge together. Charge through this door. The Empyrean symbols and supreme secret arts are waiting for us. Ling Han roared as he retreated, the large hand pressed down. Yet Ling Han hurriedly retreated, instantly causing a great many people to be enveloped by this strike. No one was willing to be captured without a fight. In addition, the actions of the 3 4th-step Empyreans had already aroused the anger of the crowd. Everyone stood together and was already mentally prepared to fight. Thus, when they saw the 4th-step Empyrean take the initiative to attack, someone immediately retaliated. With this lead, it immediately caused a chain reaction, and more people made their moves. Pung pung pung. A chaotic battle immediately broke out. He really doesn't know what's good for him. The other 2 4th-step experts looked at Ping Xinghai. This had definitely been arranged by that brat to throw the situation into chaos, so that he could fish in troubled waters. Otherwise, a 1st-step heavenly venerate wouldn't even be able to break through the aura field they had set up. Even though the 4th-step cultivators had an overwhelming advantage, they didn't dare to start a massacre. After all, many of the people here had people who were on par with them, or even surpassed them. Now that the treasure had not appeared, it was really not worth offending those people. Hence, the remaining 2 4th-step heavenly venerables had their eyes on the leveling star ocean. To catch bandits, one must first catch the ringleader. As long as they could take down the ringleader, the others would fall apart. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 4th-step experts attacked at the same time, grabbing at Ping Xinghai. Ping Xinghai felt extremely wronged. Although he had organized a group of people to force the 3 powerhouses to abdicate, he didn't have the slightest intention of starting a fight. This was because he knew that even if everyone joined forces, it would be useless. It was impossible for them to defeat 3 4th-step Empyreans. But now, 2 4th-step powerhouses were attacking him at the same time, which made him feel flattered. How did things come to this? Just at this moment, a figure passed through and leaped toward the revolving door of light. Although the 2 4th-step experts had attacked Ping Xinghai, there was no need for a grand 4th-step expert to use his full strength against a 3rd-step expert. One of the 4th-step experts stretched out his other hand and swatted at that figure with extreme disdain. It was just 1 step. Bam, however, he had miscalculated. In the face of this attack, the 1st-step heavenly venerate did not dodge. Instead, he clenched his fist and punched back. "You're courting death," he said in his heart. Facing a 4-step attack head-on, even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. But in the next instant, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. That person actually withstood his blow. Although he did not use his full power in this attack, he had reached the 3rd step. Suppressing a mere 1st step was as easy as flipping his hand. "Ling Han!" Ping Xinghai immediately called out. He didn't recognize Ling Han. But was there a second person who could compete with the power of 3 steps? Got tricked. He immediately realized that he had been tricked by Ling Han. This guy had done so much with the intention of encouraging everyone to create an opportunity for him, so that he could fish in troubled waters and enter the palace. Damn it, damn it. Ping Xinghai almost spat out a mouthful of blood. 3 of his underlings had been killed by Ling Han just then, yet he was still cheering for Ling Han now, creating an opportunity for him? Just how stupid was he? Damn it. The 2 4th-step experts were enraged. They had made a single mistake and lost everything. They had not expected that Ling Han was the one who had really wanted to fish in troubled waters. Moreover, he had hidden his strength so well. A 1st-step heavenly venerate actually had the power of a 3rd-step expert. They glared at Ping Xinghai. He must be the real mastermind. Otherwise, why would he work so hard to serve Ling Han? Bang! The 2 attacks landed. 4 steps had attacked together, so how could a 3-step expert block it? Ping Xinghai was instantly suppressed by a single blow. Pfft! Ping Xinghai finally spat out blood. He was filled with hatred. He just wanted Ling Han to appear in front of him, so that he could eat Ling Han alive. He had really been wronged by being a sucker. Ling Han had already rushed through the door of light. A strange force guided him, and he appeared on a plain. There were broken armor and corpses lying everywhere, exuding the aura of war. A flag had been inserted into the ground. There was no pattern on it, only 4 words. Never retreat. Never retreat. This was a bold statement. But when facing a strong enemy, how many people could never retreat? Moreover, retreat was also a kind of tactical strategy. Whether it was a duel between 2 people or a large-scale war, retreat was always a choice. Before he finished thinking, he saw a dense black army appear in front of him. There were a shocking number of them. There were millions of them, and the aura they exuded had reached the heavenly venerate level. Even if they were all first-step heavenly venerates, under the pressure of millions of them, even a 4th-step heavenly venerate would have to retreat. Never retreat. How is that possible? Ling Han nodded. No wonder even the 3 4th-step powerhouses had not passed this test. He reckoned that as long as he took a step back, he would have failed. But the problem was that millions of soldiers were charging over. Who could not retreat? Ha ha ha. Ling Han laughed loudly, and took the initiative to attack. Pung! He was like a lion in a flock of sheep, charging into the enemy's army. His fists shot out, instantly sending hundreds of powerful enemies flying. In front of Ling Han, a 1st-step heavenly venerate was no match at all. Pung pung pung, with one punch, powerful enemies exploded one after another. And the scene was unusually realistic. There was blood splattering, corpses falling everywhere, emitting a desolate atmosphere. But Ling Han knew that all this was definitely an illusion. If a 5th-step heavenly venerate could really create such a large heavenly venerate army, then wouldn't the world be in chaos? The white tiger was in charge of killing, so the test here was killing intent. Then he would kill to his heart's content. Ling Han's black hair fluttered, and he began a massacre. However, although his strength had reached the 3rd step, there were too many heavenly venerates here, and he was still hit by a few attacks, causing him to vomit blood and break bones. However, Ling Han circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, maintaining his body's battle prowess. His hands clenched into fists, and he used the Furious Fist. It was just right. He could use these countless heavenly venerates to temper his supreme fist intent. He was the kind of person that the more pressure he was under, the more motivation he had. Every time he was injured, his motivation would increase by a fraction. Comprehension continued to surge in his mind. Ling Han laughed loudly, only feeling that he was fighting to his heart's content, and unspeakably delighted. So what if he was injured? Which martial artist of his generation wouldn't be injured? Time continued to pass. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, but the battle never stopped. More and more armies appeared, wanting to annihilate Ling Han alive. These enemies only had the aura of a heavenly venerate, and their strength was really limited. Otherwise, even Ling Han wouldn't dare to be so arrogant, not retreating even a step when facing millions of 5th-step heavenly venerates. But this kind of battle seemed to never stop, and even the strongest person's willpower couldn't help but waver. Yet Ling Han enjoyed it, as if it were malt syrup. He treated this battle as the best way to temper his fist arts, completely forgetting the purpose of entering this place. He pressed forward, not retreating even half a step. Chapter 28-22. A Beautiful Romance. Ling Han suddenly moved toward another person in the palace. This enormous and indescribable aura was emitted by this woman. She had passed the test, and her soul had returned to her body. Boom! The aura trembled for a moment before returning to the woman's body, not a single trace leaking out. Although it had only been a moment, Ling Han was extremely shocked. He had already seen through this woman's powerful nature. 4th-step heavenly venerate, no wonder she could break through the blockade outside. She was also a 4th-step heavenly venerate, but if she wanted to break through, how could she be stopped? Moreover, Ling Han had a feeling that this woman's strength was far stronger than an ordinary 4th-step heavenly venerate. Wang! The woman opened her eyes, and the originally dark palace suddenly lit up. Half of it was because her eyes were too bright, and the other half was because of her beauty. The moment she opened her eyes, she was like a blooming flower, beautiful to the extreme. Ling Han was slightly dazed, but he quickly calmed down. It was not that he had never seen beautiful women before. And right now, The only thought in his mind was to improve his martial art strength. He had a beautiful wife, a beloved son, and a beloved daughter. What more could he ask for? The woman's gaze swept around, and she could not help but reveal a look of surprise. She had not expected that there would be a living person here. "Are you the person who entered here 10,000 years ago?" she asked. Her voice was soft and indescribably pleasing to the ear. Ling Han shook his head. "Let me correct you. That was already 20,000 years ago." The woman was taken aback, and then she immediately reacted from the changes in her body. Her pretty face could not help but change slightly. In other words, in the last 10,000 years, she had been lying in front of Ling Han defenseless. Had this guy done anything to her? Seeing this, Ling Han hurriedly waved his hand. "Don't misunderstand. If I had touched a single strand of your hair, you would have been able to sense it even if you had gone astray." The woman slowly nodded. Indeed, although her consciousness had been extracted, if her body encountered any danger, her divine sense would definitely immediately return. However, this test would end with her failure. However, she still looked at Ling Han a few more times. This guy could actually not have any thoughts about her for 10,000 years. This was very shocking. She was full of confidence in her own charm. What man could not be tempted by her? It was this strange person. "Since you've already woken up, why haven't you left?" the woman asked. Ling Han shrugged. "There's nothing I can do. I don't know how to leave." Of course, this was a lie. He hadn't even started looking for a way out. The woman's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. "It's said that there's an ancient heavenly venerate's inheritance here. You arrived here before me, so it should be yours." "I'm innocent." Ling Han hurriedly pushed the blame away. There was no way he would admit it. The other party was a fourth-step celestial venerable. If she knew that he had obtained a celestial venerable's inheritance, wouldn't she skin him alive? Of course, Ling Han could travel between planes, so he wasn't too worried. It was just that he didn't want to take the risk of encountering madness, unless it was absolutely necessary. The woman seemed to have seen through Ling Han's thoughts and said, "Don't worry. Even if the inheritance is obtained by you, I won't take it by force." "Are you for real? So generous? You're a fourth-step heavenly venerable. You have the strength to take it by force." Of course, Ling Han wouldn't ask about this. He just chuckled and pretended not to hear it. The woman didn't expose him. She just looked around the palace. When she discovered that there really wasn't any inheritance here, she started to look for the exit. It didn't take long before she found it. This was a one-way exit. The two of them walked in. Schwa, they appeared in the plains outside. The woman waved her hand and floated away. Ling Han was shocked. The other party had actually left just like that. Hadn't she already guessed that he had obtained the inheritance? She was actually so generous? Unbelievable. Ling Han couldn't help but raise his voice and ask, "Who are you?" Unfortunately, even his voice couldn't catch up to a fourth-step celestial venerable. That woman instantly disappeared into the distance. So smart, so upright, and so powerful, just who is it? Ling Han shook his head and chose to walk in the opposite direction of that beautiful woman. He changed his appearance and aura again. After all, he had cheated many people before, so he had a guilty conscience. Walking along the way about a day later, he arrived at another large tomb. It was still the same as before, like an upside-down big bowl. Ling Han found the entrance very quickly. After entering inside, it was another massive plaza, making him feel like he hadn't changed places at all. There were still many people in the plaza. Most of the people were surrounding the palace's entrance, lining up there. Ling Han walked over, found someone with a smile, and asked about the situation here. This was the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Similar to the White Tiger Palace Hall, there were originally a few fourth-step guards here, not letting others enter. But along with the passing of time, more and more powerhouses came. This broke the balance. However, similar to the White Tiger Palace Hall, no one could pass through here either. Hence, as time passed, those fourth-step celestial venerables also didn't need to waste this effort anymore. Anyone could enter, and they went to other palaces to search for lucky chances. There was a test here too, and the difficulty was similarly astonishingly high. The number of people that could be accommodated also had a limit. Hence, now that the number of people was full, other people couldn't enter anymore. and could only line up outside. Ling Han counted. There weren't many people in line, only a dozen or so. All right, I'll line up then. In fact, I've always been very law-abiding. Ling Han walked over, planning to line up. Hey, this person is so bold. It's just one step. Where does he get his courage from? Seeing Ling Han stride over, the surrounding people all let out exclamations of surprise. Ling Han naturally didn't care. He walked straight to the end of the line and stood still, about 10 meters away from the person in front of him. He couldn't get too close, or he would be misunderstood by others as having hostility. He hadn't expected that the person in front of him would actually have an opinion. He turned around and threw him a disdainful expression. Ling Han wasn't happy. So what if you're a third step? Do you think I'm afraid of you? So what? I owe you. He also revealed a disdainful expression. Fuck, who didn't know how to do that? That third step couldn't help but sneer and say, you, a first step junior, are really bold. You really don't know what's good for you. Triangle-eyed, do you know how to talk? If you don't know how to talk, then let me teach you a good lesson. Ling Han gave tit for tat. How could he be willing to suffer such a loss? Haha, that third step was so angry that he laughed, but his gaze was extremely cold. Which family are you a descendant of? Don't you know that being so arrogant will cause trouble for your family? He didn't make a move. Instead, he asked this question. Clearly, he was afraid of Ling Han's background. After all, although most celestial venerables had returned to their own planes, the high-level celestial venerables had basically stayed behind. If Ling Han had a fifth step or sixth step expert behind him, he didn't want to be hunted down by such an expert. Ling Han chuckled. I'll return your words. That third step stopped laughing, because the dozen or so third step experts in front of him were all smiling. Clearly, they were laughing at his joke. You're courting death. Chapter 28-23. This third step Empyrean brazenly made a move and grabbed at Ling Han. Because he didn't know whether Ling Han had a powerful background, he didn't kill him. He just wanted to take down Ling Han. Of course, if it was proven that Ling Han didn't have any backing, or that his backing wasn't strong enough, then he would definitely kill Ling Han. He dared to speak to a third step expert like this. Just based on his attitude, he had to kill him. How many people were laughing at him? He couldn't afford to lose face like this. Ling Han circulated the 10th talisman, causing his entire body to instantly emit an extremely fierce killing intent. He seemed as if he'd transformed into a white tiger of slaughter, and his ferocious might surged while his baleful aura had transformed into a material form. He met it with his fist. Pung! The talisman of talismans, coupled with the power of the Wrath Fist, instantly exploded with unparalleled power. A shockwave spread out. Ling Han's body shook, but the third step heavenly venerate was sent flying. Everyone was dumbfounded. Was this a dream? How could it be so strong? Ling Han knew very well that although this third step celestial master was not much inferior to him in terms of strength, his attack was too casual. He did not use any celestial master symbols or secret techniques at all. How could he block the power of Ling Han's punch? When did such a fearsome fellow appear? Someone murmured. He's simply a monster. Where did you come from? Ling Han brushed his hands off and looked at the other people in the queue. Only then did he realize that everyone in the queue was a third step Empyrean. Only those with 3 steps were qualified to line up here. After 3 steps, it would be the second step, and then the first step. In the world of martial art, there was a strict hierarchy. A martial artist at the second step would be crushed by a martial artist at the first step, and a martial artist at the third step would also be crushed by a martial artist at the second step. Ling Han's move to line up was tantamount to breaking the rules. No wonder he was targeted. Since he had already started fighting, it naturally didn't matter. He glanced at the remaining third step celestial venerables. Do you want to fight? None of these third step heavenly venerables replied. Fighting with Ling Han would only result in a loss, not a gain. Why, if he won, it would be a matter of course for him to take 3 steps against one. There would be no glory at all. But if he lost, he would lose all his face. A dignified third step Empyrean would actually lose to a first step Empyrean. At any other time in the past, They certainly wouldn't believe that such a ridiculous thing could happen. But now, a strong sense of alarm rose in their hearts. This one step was too monstrous. Even though the previous 3 steps Ling Han was too young and didn't display his full strength, it still couldn't erase the fact that Ling Han was powerful. Pung! There was a loud noise as a figure flew over from afar and landed heavily on the square, setting off a powerful shock wave. Even a second step Heavenly Venerable would need to use all his strength to block it. One step, and he would be sent flying. It was the 3-step martial artist from before. He was furious to be sent flying by a 1-step martial artist. This was a great humiliation. You are courting death. Now, no matter what background Ling Han had, even if he was the only son of a 7th-step Empyrean, he would not hesitate to kill him. Haha, you speak as if you've suffered a great grievance. Ling Han shook his head. Ask yourself first if you have the right to be angry. Die. The 3rd-step Empyrean charged over, a blurry rune lighting up in his hand. This time, he naturally wouldn't repeat the same mistake. He activated his Empyrean symbol and secret technique at the same time. Ling Han still met the 10th symbol with a furious fist. He punched out, and the fist energy actually transformed into a large white tiger that was hundreds of feet long, pouncing towards the 3rd-step Empyrean. Pung! The 3rd-step Empyrean waved his palm to meet the tiger, but the white tiger seemed to be solid, actually pushing his figure back. Not only did he retreat to his original position, but he was even retreating, showing that he was at an absolute disadvantage. The 3rd-step Empyrean's eyes narrowed. They could accept that Ling Han was a bit stronger, but what they couldn't accept was that Ling Han had actually forced the 3rd-step Empyrean back with a single attack. This was too exaggerated. Only the strength of a 4th-step Empyrean could have such a crushing might. But if it was really a 4th-step Empyrean, then the 3rd-step Empyrean wouldn't just be sent flying, but his body would explode. This wasn't because Ling Han's strength had reached a crushing level, but because the secret technique or Empyrean symbol he used had the ability to materialize, which was why he was so inconceivably strong. Ling Han was also shocked. He hadn't expected that the 10th symbol would have such an effect. You're quite angry. Let's fight again. Ling Han beckoned at the 3rd-step Empyrean. The 3rd-step Empyrean's face was filled with rage. He wanted to fight, but when he thought about how he couldn't even defeat Ling Han with his full strength, he would only be humiliating himself if he fought again. His chest heaved up and down. After a long while, he clenched his fists, turned and sat down, not saying another word. He endured this insult and swallowed this grievance. The other 3rd-step Empyrean glanced at each other, and one of them suddenly said, "Young friend, your talent in martial art is truly astonishing. We admire you, so we are willing to let you be ranked first." That's good. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "Then I'll thank you." He walked to the very front and quietly waited. After several days, a figure flashed, and there was another person here. This was a 3rd-step Empyrean. His face was filled with disappointment. He shook his head and immediately strode away, not greeting anyone. He had failed to pass the trial. Ling Han's figure leapt up, and he entered the door of light. Instantly, he discovered that he had entered another region. With his experience in the White Tiger Hall, Ling Han immediately realized that his consciousness had entered another space. His real body should have already entered the palace, but if he failed to pass the trial, he would be driven out, just like that 3rd-step Empyrean. He looked around. This was a land of flames. The vermilion bird was of the fire attribute, so it was not surprising for such an environment to appear. However, the white tiger and the vermilion bird were both main attackers. It was just that the white tiger was of the metal attribute, representing sharpness and invincibility, while the vermilion bird represented flames, burning everything. Fine. Then let's fight to our heart's content again. Boom, the flames surged, turning into a word. Kill. In the trial of the White Tiger Hall, one could never retreat, but here, it had become a simple word. Kill. How dark must he kill until the heavens and earth darkened? Pung pung pung. The earth trembled, and an incomparably huge golden-bodied man appeared in front of him. It was at least 300 meters tall, and it seemed to be cast from metal. It had no eyes or mouth, and its face was like a blank slate. It arrived very quickly, and directly stretched out its arm, pressing down toward Ling Han. It was too huge. This strike was like a small mountain crashing down, overflowing with golden light. Ling Han let out a long roar, still using a furious fist to meet it. He had not advanced his furious fist to the third step level yet, and he needed high-intensity battles to improve his fist intent. Bang! He met the strike head-on. Instantly, the metallic man's figure shook, and it disintegrated, turning into countless pieces. However, it was only for an instant, and these pieces immediately condensed and reformed its body. Boom! This metallic man smacked over again. It couldn't be killed. Ling Han raised his fist again, and sent the metallic man flying again. Pung! In midair, this metallic man was once again shattered. But similarly, it immediately recovered. Chapter 28-24. Ling Han frowned. Although he still killed the metal man in one move, its strength was increasing. The first time, it was at the first level, but now it was at the second level. Boom! The metal man attacked for the third time. It still dropped its palm from the sky. Golden light flashed, and it was going to smash Ling Han to death. Ling Han punched out in response. Pung! Amidst a deafening boom, the metallic man actually managed to block Ling Han's attack. The power of the third level. Bang bang bang. The metal man kept punching at Ling Han with its fists. It was so fast that it could topple mountains and overturn the seas. Was it slowly getting used to the challenger's strength? Or would its strength increase by a level every time it was killed? If it kept increasing like this, how could it kill him? Ling Han didn't care about that for now. He kept punching at this guy. Since he hadn't improved his fury fist to the third level, he might as well train it on this guy. The two people fought. This metallic man's attack was a little mechanical, and had a certain pattern to it. Thus, in less than the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, Ling Han's fist had landed on its chest, directly punching a hole through its heart. It quickly recovered and smashed its fists down furiously. Its strength had surprisingly increased a little. Fortunately, the improvement this time wasn't big. It didn't reach the fourth level in one go, but slightly surpassed Ling Han's level. This made the battle even more intense, but Ling Han was a real human. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, he found another flaw, and killed the metal man. As expected, it naturally recovered. Battle battle battle. Every time Ling Han killed a metallic man, it would become slightly stronger, making it more and more difficult to kill. This was in line with Ling Han's desire to practice boxing. He also needed an opponent who could compete with him. He had enough enemies in the White Tiger Palace, but this place was strong enough. Kill kill kill. He killed the metal man over and over again, but the metal man was getting stronger and stronger, and its counterattack was getting fiercer. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years. After more than 700 years, Ling Han could still kill the metal men, but it would take him longer and longer, and he would have to pay a high price. More importantly, the metal men would immediately recover every time they were killed. They didn't give Ling Han any chance to recover at all. Once or twice was fine, but after a few dozen times, or even 100 times, the pressure on Ling Han was like a mountain. Ling Han believed that he wouldn't have to hold on for too long. Otherwise, he would just have to fight the metal men, who weren't as strong as they were before. The point of this level is to kill. How many times do I have to kill to qualify? Ling Han didn't know. He just killed the metal man over and over again. Maybe he would be able to pass after killing it this time. Maybe he would have to kill it 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. Just like the White Tiger Hall, it was very easy for people to lose their fighting spirit as they fought and give up. Ling Han didn't. The strength of his battle intent was unimaginable to anyone. He simply honed his fury fist over and over again, and after more than 100,000 years, he had a feeling that he was facing a breakthrough point. If he could pass it, his rage fist would be upgraded to level 3. Then he would fight to his heart's content. He roared and attacked like crazy. Bam bam bam. Soon, the metal man was killed again by him. However, it immediately came back and became even more terrifying. What Ling Han wanted was for his opponents to be strong. If they weren't strong enough, It would be hard for him to break through. Come on. Bam. However, this time, the metal man's battle prowess was already infinitely close to level 4, and it was Ling Han's turn to be suppressed. As their fists collided, Ling Han felt a jolt and pain in his arms, which were inconceivably bent. His arms were broken, but he didn't even grunt. With a thought, he poured power into his arms and forced them to straighten. Then he attacked the metal man again. He roared. His power was boiling, and his fighting spirit was like a song. Pung pung pung. He punched a few thousand times in a row, and instantly the metal man exploded. He laughed loudly. His rage fist had finally reached level 3, which allowed him to show his invincible might. However, both of his hands and his fists were gone. They had been obliterated in the intense battle earlier. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and his hands immediately grew back. However, this time, the metal man didn't come back to life. After a moment of shock, Ling Han felt a strong pull. He appeared in a palace. The power in his body boiled, giving him a feeling of being reborn. He had passed, so his spirit returned to his body, triggering an explosion of power. Ling Han looked inside his body, and found that his cultivation level had improved to a certain extent. However, this time, he had only spent more than 100,000 years in the spiritual world. Naturally, not much time had passed in the real world, so his cultivation level had only improved a little. Ling Han didn't mind, because his rage fist had already reached level 3, and was worthy of his battle prowess. Moreover, the rage fist was a martial art that completely belonged to him, and was better than any celestial venerable technique that anyone had passed on to him. Using it at level 3, Ling Han believed that this was the best celestial venerable technique for him. A golden bone suddenly appeared in front of him. This should be a pelvic bone, and there were still blurry symbols on it. The inheritance had arrived. Ling Han reached out to touch it. Instantly, a symbol flashed in his mind. It was as if countless flames were burning, as if it wanted to turn his mind into a sea of fire. The voice of the 4 symbols heavenly venerable rang out again, and it was exactly the same as what had been said in the White Tiger Palace Hall. Ling Han began to analyze this symbol, which took a long time. After 10,000 years, he finally stood up, a smile on his face. The 11th symbol completed. With the blessing of this symbol, Ling Han's cultivation speed could increase 17 times, which was equivalent to the 10th symbol. Celestial Venerable 4 symbols said that if I combine the 4 symbols, I can comprehend one of his secret techniques. However, since that mysterious woman could pass through White Tiger Hall, she might be able to pass through Azure Dragon Hall and Black Tortoise Hall. Judging from the direction she went, she should be going to Azure Dragon Hall. If she takes away the symbol of Azure Dragon Hall, then even if I obtain the remaining symbols of Black Tortoise Hall, I won't be able to comprehend that secret technique. What a pity, what a pity. Ling Han shook his head. Although the celestial venerable symbol could be separated, it was at the cost of cutting off a corner of his mind, which was a great injury to the celestial venerable. No matter what price he paid, the other party probably wouldn't give him the Azure Dragon symbol. Moreover, the other party was at level 4, and an extremely tyrannical level 4 at that. If he really dared to bring it up, the other party might refine him and obtain the 4 symbols symbol and that secret technique. Let's go to Black Tortoise Hall. Ling Han stood up. After finding the exit, he immediately left. After identifying the direction, he headed toward Black Tortoise Hall. Not long after, he arrived at the 3rd burial mound. He entered, and his gaze swept around. He saw that there were still many people gathered in the huge square. But this was very similar to the White Tiger Hall. The crowd was not lining up. Instead, they were scattered in 2s and 3s, heading toward the entrance of the palace. There, someone was sealing the entrance. Chapter 28-26. A Beautiful Romance. Zhuang Fei Rui made a move, grabbing at the stunning beauty. Pung. The stunning beauty waved her hand lightly, but an incomparably terrifying power surged, and Zhuang Fei Rui was directly sent flying. In an instant, he turned into a small dot, and could not be seen. Everyone was tongue-tied, as if they had seen a ghost. It was fake, right? Zhuangfei Rui was already so powerful, suppressing 7 fourth-step cultivators with his own power. But facing this stunning beauty, he was not her match at all. What kind of monster was this woman? Ling Han was also stunned. He knew that this woman was very, very strong, but he had not imagined that she would be this strong. Although she had performed such a magnificent feat, the stunning beauty did not seem to care at all, as if she had merely brushed off some dust. Instead, her gaze swept around, and very quickly locked onto Ling Han. Ling Han instantly felt like a mouse that had been targeted by a cat, causing him to feel a chill all over his body. This woman was too strong. Why do you need to be so sneaky? The woman said, and even made an inviting gesture towards the revolving door of light. Ling Han was shocked. Weren't you afraid that I would snatch the heavenly venerable mark before you? However, since she had already invited him like this, how could he shrink back? He strode forward and walked towards the revolving door. Ling Han! Zhuangfei Rui had already flown back from afar, and he immediately said through gritted teeth. He was a fourth-step cultivator, and could see through Ling Han's disguise with a single glance. He wanted to make a move, but the stunning beauty's gaze had already turned towards him, instantly causing him to forcibly stop his movements. The other party was at the peak of the 4th step, and was even more freakish than him, who knew how much power of the plane she had condensed, and she was definitely not someone he could match. If he stepped forward to fight, he would only be seeking his own humiliation. Damn it! This person had the heavenly venerable mark, and he was determined to obtain it. Moreover, this person had caused him to lose all face. If he did not kill Ling Han, this would be a humiliation that would follow him for the rest of his life. Ling Han walked over and said with a smile, "Miss, do you want to compete with me?" Unexpectedly, the stunning beauty really nodded and said, "That's right." "All right." Ling Han agreed straightforwardly. Even a woman had such a heroic spirit. She could obviously drive him away, or at least gain the upper hand. But she gave him a chance to compete fairly. If he still didn't dare to accept the challenge, then he wouldn't be a man. The two of them strode forward, and they entered the door of light. Once the peerless beauty left, everyone finally came back to their senses and relaxed from the incomparably oppressive atmosphere. "Who is this woman?" Someone muttered. "He's too strong." Even Zhuangfei, the #1 genius, was sent flying with a single slap. Is there really such a person in the world? The oppressive atmosphere gradually disappeared. Everyone was filled with curiosity. Who exactly was this powerful woman? "Do you really want to know who she is?" Someone suddenly asked. Instantly, everyone's gazes turned over. Even Zhuangfei was no exception. He really wanted to know the identity of this lady. Her? Lin Yulian. Hiss! Everyone present gasped. If Zhuangfei was said to be the #1 genius of his generation, then Lin Yulian was the greatest genius of all time. The only one who could rival her was Xian Qihu. Of course, there was also Wu Haoying later on. In comparison, Zhuangfei was simply insignificant. Lin Yulian. Who would have thought that not only is she so powerful, but she's also so beautiful? If I were to marry her. Someone began to fantasize. The greatest genius of all time. She lives up to her name. Even Zhuangfei was speechless. Not only was Lin Yulian's cultivation level slightly higher than his, her talent in martial art was also far superior. Facing such an existence, what else could he do other than submit? Who would be able to embrace such a beautiful genius? Zhuangfei took a step forward and entered the door of light without hesitation. His talent and strength were indeed not as good as Lin Yulian's, but things like fortuitous encounters were not something that could be obtained with strength alone. Ling Han discovered that he was once again in the middle of a plain, but there was no existence of that exceedingly beautiful woman beside him. This was a spiritual world, so it was normal not to have her. Both of their bodies should be in the main hall. There was a flag at the side with only one word written on it: guard. Ling Han knew that this was the martial hall, so the test must be related to defense. What was it? Alarmed, he raised his head and saw a large number of meteorites falling from the sky, smashing towards him. It was truly a large area, covering the sky and earth. There was nowhere to hide. He hurriedly circulated his rage fist and blasted it towards the sky. Pung pung pung. The meteors shattered one after another, shattering before they could even land on him. The first round of attacks was perfectly resolved. But immediately after, another large number of meteorites came crashing down, this time with even more ferocious power. Ling Han thought of the Vermilion Bird Hall's test. He knew that this attack was definitely increasing step by step, searching for his limit, and then bombarding him within that range. This was the true test. He easily resolved this wave, but after a few more waves of meteorites, his limit was also forced out. This time, even if he bombarded with his rage fist, he wouldn't be able to completely resolve it. There was still a large number of meteorites falling madly, forcing him to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll to withstand it. This was the main purpose of the Martial Hall's test, to withstand a beating. Long, more meteorites fell, turning into an endless catastrophe. Ling Han's heroic spirit rose. He didn't believe that he couldn't withstand it. Come. The meteorites turned into rain, wave after wave, and he had to withstand it with all his strength. In front of such an attack, Ling Han didn't have the ability to fight back, and could only circulate the indestructible heaven scroll to withstand it. However, the indestructible heaven scroll was only created at the first step, and had huge limitations. But from the perspective of defense, what could be better than the indestructible heaven scroll? Ling Han was also comprehending as he endured the beating, improving the inadequacies of the indestructible heaven scroll to suit his current battle prowess. Long, the meteorite rain didn't seem to stop, wave after wave, wanting to crush Ling Han. This was the most annoying part. If he knew how many waves he needed to withstand before it would end, then there would at least be hope. But now, it might end after the next wave, or he might have to withstand tens of thousands of waves, enough to make those with strong willpower give up. Ling Han clenched his teeth and persevered. This wasn't a battle, but a beating, which didn't match his martial art. But for the heavenly venerable mark, and to test his toughness, he wasn't willing to retreat. Time continued to pass, and Ling Han's research on the indestructible heaven scroll continued to deepen. However, this scroll wasn't created by him, so it wasn't as fast as the Rage Fist's improvement. This time, Ling Han really relied on willpower. He continuously roared, and the meteorites smashed on his body. It was painful. 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years. Until 300,000 years passed. Ling Han suddenly felt his body relax, and then he appeared in another place. He passed. At the same time, a strong presence immediately rose around him like a violent storm. Ling Yulian also passed the test. Ling Han couldn't help but admire such an exquisite beauty. Being able to withstand the bombardment of 300,000 years, her willpower was truly shocking. Chapter 28-27. There were only the two of them in the hall. Ling Han was not surprised. Even if someone came in midway, they could not resist the impact of the meteor shower. So they were eliminated early. A leg bone appeared. It was completely light gold, and had indistinct symbols flickering on it. Ling Han stretched out his hand, and pressed on the leg bone. At the same time, Ling Yulian also extended her slender hand, and pointed at the leg bone. A streak of brilliant light shot out. The leg bone released a shocking brilliant light. But this was not all. Ling Han and Ling Yulian's consciousness also shone. Wang. A total of 3 symbols rose from the top of their heads. One turned into a white tiger, one into a vermilion bird, and one into an azure dragon. The light that rose from the leg bone also turned into a black tortoise. Ling Han couldn't help being startled. Wasn't the Empyrean symbol only capable of transmitting, and not inheriting? However, he clearly sensed the azure dragon symbol. He could completely control it. This is a combination symbol, Lin Yulian said. When the 4 runes resonate with each other, they can appear. However, this is only limited to when the black tortoise seal has not dissipated. She paused for a moment before continuing. Hurry up and comprehend it. We don't have much time. Ling Han hurriedly concentrated. No matter what the reason was, His current focus was to master the azure dragon and black tortoise symbols. The two of them sat down cross-legged, firmly imprinting the heavenly venerate symbol in their sea of consciousness. 3 days later, the golden leg bone turned into countless stars and disappeared. However, Ling Han revealed a satisfied look. He had already branded the azure dragon and black tortoise, heavenly sovereign symbols, in his sea of consciousness. Not daring to be careless, he began to analyze again. Lin Yulian was the same. Her mission was even greater, and she had to comprehend 3 symbols. Time passed quietly. Soon 20,000 years had passed. Ling Han opened his eyes. He had already mastered the 4 symbols. A single symbol could increase his cultivation speed by 17 times. And it was the same for his battle prowess. However, 4 symbols could be activated at the same time in battle, which was terrifying. It could increase his strength by 39 times. What's going on? If the 4 symbols could be superimposed, shouldn't it be 68 times? What did 39 times mean? Moreover, the effects of the heavenly venerate symbol couldn't be stacked. No matter how many heavenly venerate symbols were used, the strongest one would only be able to unleash its true power. This should have something to do with the combination symbol, right? Ling Han thought of what Lin Yulian had said previously, and said with certainty in his heart. However, she was presently still in the midst of meditation with her eyes closed, so he could not possibly wake her up to question her and interrupt her comprehension. That would really create a great enmity. Moreover, it seemed like Lin Yulian had already expected that they would both be able to grasp the 4 symbols talisman when they activated the 4th heavenly venerate symbol together. That was why the other party had specially summoned him to enter the light door and take the test at the same time. Ling Han thought about it and decided to continue his seclusion to wait for Lin Yulian. He wanted to clarify things. Of course, he wouldn't waste any time, because Heavenly Lord 4 symbols had said that if he grasped all 4 symbols, he would be able to comprehend an ultimate technique from them. He started to deduce, and very soon, he had an idea and was slowly improving. After 90 years, Ling Han suddenly stood up and punched out. Hong the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise all appeared and pounced forward. The 4 symbols transformation, and its power skyrocketed. Ling Han circulated the 4 symbols talisman at the same time, and punched out a second time. This time, the phenomenon was even more astonishing. The 4 divine beasts seemed to have materialized, and they had a great momentum that could destroy heaven and earth. This secret technique and the 4 symbols talisman are circulated at the same time. Its power is truly astonishing. Ling Han was very impressed. This was an ultimate technique created by a 5th step heavenly venerate, and it could be used at least until his battle prowess reached the 5th step. However, what I truly rely on is the Rage Fist. I definitely can't abandon it. Ling Han practiced as he waited. Another 1,000 years passed, and Lin Yulian finally woke up from her meditation. If you have any questions, ask. If I can answer them, I will try my best to answer them. This was the woman's first sentence, as if she had seen through Ling Han's thoughts. It really wasn't good for a woman to be so smart. It would make a man feel very unfulfilled. Ling Han chuckled. May I ask, miss, what is a combination of symbols? According to my father's calculations, there are a total of 999 heavenly venerate symbols. If one can completely grasp them and form a sequence, then every symbol can resonate with each other and display unimaginable power, Lin Yulian said. She paused for a moment, then said, however, even if one doesn't completely grasp these symbols, they can still resonate with each other and form a power amplification. It's just that the effect will be slightly weaker. Ling Han nodded. No wonder when he circulated the 4 symbols talisman at the same time, his power didn't increase by 17 times, but by 39 times. He was startled. If he could obtain the adjacent symbols, then wouldn't his battle prowess increase by 50 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times? You guessed correctly, Lin Yulian said. So, even if the number of heavenly venerate symbols is the same and the level is the same, if one side is continuous and the other side is not, there will be a huge difference in their battle prowess. She glanced at Ling Han and said, "Since I've started, I might as well say a little more. 999 celestial venerate symbols are divided into 9 levels, and each level has 111 symbols. My father ranked them. The first level of heavenly venerate symbols can increase one's battle prowess by 4 to 10 times. The second level is between 11 to 20 times. So on and so forth. The 9th level is between 81 to 90 times. However, don't think that low-level symbols are useless." Lin Yulian's expression turned solemn. Because of the continuity and comminability of the heavenly venerate symbols, you can't ignore any heavenly venerate symbol. Moreover, even if it's a low-level symbol, as long as it can be combined and circulated together, its power can't be underestimated. Ling Han nodded. He had really been taught a lesson today. He was even more curious about this stunning beauty's identity. What was her background? How did she know so many secrets? He couldn't help but ask, "May I ask, miss, have we met before?" She was a dignified fourth-step cultivator who could crush a super genius like Zhuang Feiwei. Why was she so polite to him, a first-step cultivator? Lin Yulian smiled faintly. "My father and brother are very good to Brother Lin." Ling Han was stunned. Suddenly a guess came to his mind. "You are Lin Yulian?" Apart from this heavenly girl, who else could suppress Zhuang Feiwei in one move? Apart from Lin Luo, how many people could know that there were 999 heavenly venerate symbols in the Yuan world, and the secret of combining symbols? Lin Yulian smiled faintly. "Yes." Sure enough, Ling Han nodded. He sighed in his heart. He owed the Lin family another favor. "Brother Ling, senior brother Zhou Heng has already told my father about your guess. My father actually has the same idea. However, no one is crazy, so it's impossible to know to what extent it can reach." Lin Yulian said solemnly, "My father asked me to pass on a message to Brother Ling, continue to work hard and climb to the peak. In the future, you will definitely be an important part of quelling the calamity of madness." Chapter 28. Ling Han was slightly overwhelmed by the favor. A dignified 7th-step heavenly venerable was actually so good to him? Back in the foreign battlefield, Lin Luo had been very good to him and valued him greatly. Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, and Lin Xiaoyang's 3 disciples and son had also given him a lot of help. He could reach 8th heaven so quickly, and that was also because he cultivated in the Lin clan. "I really thank Senior Lin for your appreciation," Ling Han said. "Work hard, I'm also very good to you." Lin Yulian nodded at Ling Han, her pretty face full of encouragement. She paused. "Let's go." The two of them quickly found the exit, and after stepping out, they appeared in a plane. Lin Yulian waved her hand, and her figure fluttered, already far away. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. What kind of man would be able to make such a fairy-like woman stop in her tracks? He shook his head. This had nothing to do with him. He already had a family that warmed his heart. He left this ancient tomb. Whether it was the heavenly venerable symbols or the secret technique hidden in it, he had already obtained them. So what was the point of staying there? Moreover, his identity had already been exposed, and elites definitely had their eyes on him. Of course, he had to slip away immediately. He came to the world's #1 martial arts academy and saw the Empress and the others. They had previously agreed that if they were separated, they would meet here in the future. This group didn't gain anything this time, but when they found out that Ling Han had obtained all 4 heavenly venerable symbols, they were also happy for Ling Han. Unfortunately, Ling Han had no way to pass the 4 symbols art to others, because it required the support of 4 heavenly venerable symbols. Without them, there was no need to mention anything. Let's go find our daughter," Ling Han said with a smile. He and the Empress changed their appearances, and then entered the martial arts academy. However, they walked around, and found that their daughter still hadn't returned, which made Ling Han a little worried. His daughter was too beautiful, and would she encounter some man with bad intentions? He clearly knew that Ling Shi had pseudo-heavenly venerable strength, but was still incredibly worried. This was the privilege of a father. "I'm worried," Ling Han said. "I'm going to find her." The Empress was much more carefree than him, but since Ling Han had decided to look for her daughter, she naturally would not refuse. They set off, searching for clues along the way. Many years later, they came to a small town. According to the information, Ling Shi had settled here 7 years ago. He should be very close to his daughter. It's said that Ling Shi is looking for a treasure left behind by an ancient immortal king. This is the most likely location. Then let's wait here. We might run into someone at any time, Ling Han said. The Empress nodded, and they settled down here, waiting for their reunion with their daughter. Right now, Ling Han possessed 13 heavenly venerable tear symbols. If he activated them all at once, his cultivation speed would increase by 109 times. This seemed extremely astonishing, yet when considering the boundless power of the plane in his body, his cultivation speed was still extremely slow. At least, the Empress's speed was much faster than his. At present, she was already in the late stage of the first step, and was not far from the peak stage. Where's Ling Han? He had just touched the threshold of the middle stage of the first step, but there was still a long time before he could cross over. Celestial runes, he wanted more and more. Just like that, they waited for 37 years. This wasn't a long time. For someone like Ling Han, it was definitely a piece of cake to spend tens of thousands of years to explore a random place. On this day, there was a sudden clap of thunder, and the earth shook as if the sky was about to collapse, and the earth was about to collapse. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes and looked into the distance, as if nothing could escape his gaze no matter how far away it was. He showed a smile, but it soon froze, and his expression was indescribably strange. But every father who had experienced the marriage of a daughter would clearly know what this expression meant. Little she has a companion, the Empress said. She had arrived. Ling Shi was flying in the direction of the small town, but she wasn't alone. There was also a handsome man beside her, full of heroic spirit, very extraordinary. This bastard, Ling Han murmured. He had an urge to kill. Soon, Ling Shi and the man arrived above the small town. The Empress sent out a divine sense, and Ling Shi's figure instantly stopped. Junior sister Ling, what's wrong? The young man beside her asked. Ling Shi revealed a surprised expression. My mother is here. Oh. The young man nodded hurriedly. Then we must go pay our respects to Auntie. The two of them landed, and appeared in front of the inn where Ling Han and the Empress were staying. The Empress walked out first. She hadn't seen her daughter for so many years, and even with her cold personality, she missed her a little. Mother! Ling Shi threw herself into the Empress's arms. After so many years, she had also grown into a young lady, and her appearance didn't lose to the Empress at all. When they stood together, they were like two lotus flowers, both beautiful and elegant. The Empress caressed her daughter's long hair lightly. As for the young man, she magnificently ignored him, putting aside the fact that this young man had nothing to do with Ling Shi now. Even if he became her son-in-law, she would definitely be cold and indifferent to him. There was absolutely no possibility of a mother-in-law liking her son-in-law more and more. Mother, where's father? Ling Shi asked. The Empress pointed upwards with a finger. Upstairs. Then why isn't father coming down? Ling Shi didn't understand. In the Ling family, it was definitely Ling Han who doted on her the most. Now that they hadn't seen each other for so many years, Ling Han was actually still sitting upstairs. He's angry, the Empress said smilingly. Ling Shi was even more confused. Angry? Angry? What was there to be angry about? She hurriedly ran upstairs. I'll go see father first. She didn't even care about that companion of hers. I am Hao Jing, greetings to Auntie. The young man clasped his hands in front of the Empress, appearing neither servile nor overbearing. He was either incredibly proud and arrogant in the first place, or he had a powerful background. Otherwise, how could a mere pseudo-heavenly venerable tear dare to be so casual in front of him? The Empress was cold and indifferent. Aside from Ling Han and her daughter, everyone else was trash in her eyes. Hao Jing was rebuffed, and couldn't help but appear slightly awkward. He could only rub his nose. Upstairs, the moment Ling Shi entered, she noticed that Ling Han was sitting on a chair, but his eyes were tightly shut as if he was asleep. She walked over and softly called out, Father. Ling Han ignored her, and only after Ling Shi called out a few more times did he open his eyes. It's been so long, and you still haven't gone home to take a look. Sheer has gone back, but Ling City no longer exists, Ling Shi said. However, I know that with Father's great ability, you definitely won't encounter any danger. That's true, your father. Ling Han had just followed up, and wanted to say a few words of praise, but immediately thought that he could not be diverted by this little girl. He coughed and asked, "Who's that brat outside?" Realization dawned on Ling Shi, and she finally knew what kind of anger and jealousy her father was feeling. She couldn't help but laugh, and said, "He's just a senior brother in the academy. This time, we just happen to be going to the ruins of an ancient celestial king to search for treasures together. His name is Hao Jing." Hao Jing's good times don't last long. Ling Han shook his head. This name is too lousy. Ling Shi couldn't help but be speechless. You're really an eyesore, and even your name is in your way. Chapter 28:30. Why are you suddenly showing such a strange smile? The queen asked. Ling Han wagged his finger. I said, someone's good days really won't last long. What did you discover? The queen asked. Nothing for now, but I'll keep an eye on it, Ling Han said. Of course, he was worried about his daughter being in the same room with a strange man, so he involuntarily cast his divine will over. With his strength, how could a quasi-celestial venerable like Hao Jing possibly discover it? Even Hao Jing's low murmur, which he thought no one else could hear, was also heard by Ling Han. His senses were too sharp. He clearly knows who I am, but he deliberately pretends that he has never heard of me. Just from this point alone, there's something wrong with this brat, Ling Han said. However, I want to see what tricks he will play. The queen didn't care. She was too proud, and there was no person or thing that could attract her attention. The next day they resumed their journey. Ling City naturally couldn't return, and they didn't know if it had been destroyed by those celestial venerables in a fit of anger. Ling Han found a place to stay and began to rebuild. Celestial venerables created things with a single thought. Soon another Ling City appeared. Everyone came out from their spatial god tools and celestial tools, so they naturally had their own things to do. Ling Han actually didn't want to settle down so quickly, but in order to test Hao Jing's true colors, he decided to give him a chance. Actually, he didn't need to go through so much trouble. He could capture Hao Jing and directly interrogate him, and he didn't believe that he wouldn't talk. But Ling Han decided to be open and above board, and let Hao Jing die knowing the truth. You just have nothing to do. The queen hit the nail on the head. Ling Han laughed loudly. He really had nothing to do, so he played with Hao Jing like this. Of course, he wouldn't waste time. He usually cultivated, while watching for the birth of celestial venerable symbols. Although the Frost Plane is the only super high-level plane, the origin world is so big, there must be opportunities everywhere. Ling Han muttered to himself, but I'm just one person. Although I can travel between planes, I can't reach out to other planes. Even if an Empyrean symbol appears in another world, I don't even know about it. How can I obtain it? Is it possible to create a large number of clones? They don't need to be very strong. They can only be used to gather information. Ling Han's heart raced. Every plane had its own Empyreans, and over the endless years, many Empyreans had perished. Perhaps they had failed to break through to a higher boundary and transformed into the Tao, or perhaps they had perished in battle. After a few years, perhaps their inheritance would be born. He was a man of action, so he immediately started to refine a doppelganger. I don't need the strength of a heavenly venerable. Level 9 will do. Ling Han felt that his request wasn't enough, but a 9th firmament immortal monarch was a top-notch existence in the Flamfrost plane. How was this enough? He separated his physical body and injected a bit of the plane's power. Then, he separated a bit of his divine soul, and an avatar was formed. After all, this was casually refined. Although it has the strength of a 9th firmament, it can only last for 100 million years. After that, the plane's power will disappear, the physical body will collapse, and the soul will return. I have to do it again. He had to rearrange it again every 100 million years. Although it was a little troublesome, considering the importance of the Empyrean symbol, it was completely worth it. Ling Han created many doppelgangers and began to travel between planes, placing the doppelgangers in various planes. He only went to high-level and mid-level planes. He ignored the countless low-level planes, because low-level planes could only produce second-step Empyreans at most, and second-step Empyreans were not qualified to cultivate a Empyrean symbol, except for a freak like him. But his strength was at third step, and it was because he had traveled all over the origin world. How could he be so monstrous if he only stayed in a low-level plane? Therefore, he didn't waste this time. After everything was settled, Ling Han returned to Ling City. Although he only went to over 1,000 planes, Ling Han still spent close to 10,000 years. This was no secret in Ling City. After all, the city master hadn't shown himself all this time. Did Hao Jing make any unusual movements? Ling Han asked. No, he was very cautious, Hunyo said. After Ling Han left, he gave her the task of watching over the short-lived good times. Only she was qualified because the Empress didn't care at all, and the others weren't strong enough. As for Hunyo, how could she miss such an interesting thing? All right, I'll take over now, Ling Han said smilingly. No, Nyo also wants to continue playing, let's go together. Hunyo was in high spirits. If other Empyreans knew about this, they would definitely say that they were not doing proper work. One was a second-step Empyrean, and the other had battle prowess of a third step, but they were actually wasting time with a pseudo-heavenly venerable. They really thought too highly of him, right? Actually, Ling Han didn't have much to do now. He was cultivating, and his doppelgangers were released. If there were any unusual movements, he would know, so he just found something to do. Hao Jing was very composed, and didn't make any unusual movements. Moreover, he was very well-behaved, and was very polite when he was with Ling Shi. He only maintained the relationship between senior brother and junior sister, and wasn't anxious at all. However, after staying for more than 10,000 years, Ling Shi also requested to return to the academy. She couldn't stay at home forever, right? Ling Han thought about it, and didn't stop her, but he had a condition, and that was to let his daughter stay for another 10 years. Ling Shi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why was this daddy like a child sometimes? This also had to be negotiated, but she still agreed. In a few days, Hao Jing made his move. He quietly left Ling City, came to a mountain forest, and then took out a message talisman saying, Senior brother Luo, how's the situation on your side? Almost succeeded. A voice came from the message talisman, with a hint of dissatisfaction. Junior brother Hao, didn't I say before? For the sake of caution, we won't contact each other before I arrive. The situation has changed. Ling Shi will return to Ling City in 10 years. And we don't have much time left, Hao Jing said. You must arrive within 10 years. I'll try my best, the person on the other side said. He paused for a moment, then suddenly smiled and said, Junior brother how charming are those mother and daughter flowers. You're actually willing to give up the celestial venerable symbol for them, and give it to me. You don't need to worry about that. If you want the celestial venerable symbol, bring that thing immediately. He Jing said unhappily. All right. Who asked you to be master's son? I'm just here to run errands for you. The person on the other side said. All right, I'll arrive as soon as possible. Chi. The message talisman suddenly burned and turned into ashes. Hao Jing clapped his hands. This was a message talisman specially made by his father, and it allowed him to contact his senior brother and his father. Hung. If it weren't for the fact that father is in seclusion and can't be contacted, this kind of good thing would benefit you. He sneered, and turned to look in the direction of Ling City, a hint of covetousness appearing in his eyes. He spread out and returned to Ling City. After he left, Ling Han and Hunyo's figures appeared not far away. Hunyo tilted her head and thought for a while, then suddenly clapped her hands and said, Nyo remembers now. About 10,000 years ago, this guy contacted that senior brother Luo, and told him to look for some bloody mud. This girl, why was she still so unreliable when it came to doing things? Chapter 28:31. Ling Han sighed. Hunyo was still that Hunyo, indeed a playful person who couldn't be reassured. He looked at the place where Hao Jing disappeared, his gaze exuding coldness. He kept staring at Hao Jing, because he naturally disliked anyone who dared to have designs on his daughter. But he didn't think that Hao Jing was so daring, not only having designs on Ling Shi, but even the Empress, and even having designs on the heavenly venerable symbol on him. This good times don't last. Obviously he knows my strength, so he didn't act rashly, but asked that senior brother Luo Tongfang. Previously, I heard him say that he has a senior brother in the first step, Ling Han said to himself. The first step obviously can't be a match for me, so Luo Tongfang didn't come directly, but went to make some blood mud. This thing can hurt me, or even kill me, Ling Han speculated. Although he had strong confidence in himself, he couldn't force his way into danger. Should we take him down now? Hunyo was in high spirits. No, wait for that senior brother Luo to come, then take him down together, Ling Han said. He spread out his divine sense, enveloping the entire Ling city. No matter how the heavenly venerable hit his aura, he could immediately detect it. Once the heavenly venerable was serious, who could bully him? For years later, Ling Han suddenly had a thought. He saw a heavenly venerable enter the city. The other party had disguised himself very well. He transformed into a particle and attached himself to a carriage that was entering the city. After walking for about 2 hours, he finally transformed into an ascending origin tier cultivator and walked towards the west side of the city. Ling Han revealed a cold smirk. Hao Jing would go to a tea house in the west of the city to sit for a while every day. Obviously, the two of them agreed to meet there. He and Hunyo moved quietly and also went there. As expected, this heavenly venerable and Hao Jing soon met and entered a private room. They were very cautious and set up restrictions in the room, not letting the slightest bit of their conversation spread out. Under normal circumstances, even a fifth-step heavenly venerable couldn't possibly eavesdrop on what they were talking about, unless they forced their way in. Then it wouldn't be called eavesdropping. However, Ling Han had already set his eyes on Hao Jing. He had set up a trap in the entire tea house a step earlier. Therefore, even though the two of them had set up a restriction, they had placed it on top of Ling Han's previous trap, which was equivalent to a waste of effort. Of course, this was also because Ling Han's strength far surpassed the two of them. Otherwise, it would have been one thing for Hao Jing, but Ibu would definitely have been able to figure out what was going on. Now the two of them were completely at ease and started chatting. Junior brother Hao, it's been a few years since we last met. You've also become a quasi-Empyrean. When Master comes out of seclusion, he will definitely be extremely happy. That one-step Empyrean said. He was senior brother Luo Tongfang. Hao Jing chuckled. Thank you for your praise, senior apprentice brother Luo, but quasi-Empyrean venerables still have the word quasi-Empyrean in it. I am far from being comparable to senior apprentice brother Luo. What are you saying? After becoming a quasi-Empyrean, is that step still far away? Luo Tongfang laughed. So long-winded, still not getting to the point. Hunyo couldn't help but ridicule, clenching her small fists tightly. Aren't you afraid that we, the audience, will scold you for dragging out the show? This will cause public anger. Ling Han rubbed her little head. Have some patience. They could talk casually, without worrying about being heard by the two inside. Sure enough, after a while, the two in the room began to talk about the main topic. Got the thing? Hao Jing asked, his tone actually a little nervous. Obviously he cared too much. Hee, junior brother has so many reminders, how can I not do it? Luo Tongfang said with a smile. However, to deal with just one step, do you need such a big formation? Hao Jing shook his head. Senior brother Luo, you must not underestimate that Ling Han. This person is incredible. Although it's only one step, he can fight against 3 steps. He's definitely a monster. Really? Luo Tongfang revealed a doubtful look. 1 step could fight against 3 steps. Was there anything more absurd in the world than this? Senior brother Luo was either breaking through to pseudo-heavenly venerable, or in seclusion for 1 step. So it's normal that you don't know much about the outside world. Hao Jing nodded. However, I can say with absolute certainty that Ling Han's monster is above my understanding. Luo Tongfang nodded. Although he still didn't quite believe it, he knew that Hao Jing wasn't someone who spoke carelessly. Then, even if it's this bloody mud, what can it do to him? He became worried instead. Hao Jing revealed a cold smile. That's a 4-step heavenly venerable. After being hit by a frenzied technique, all the flesh and blood in his body turned into bloody mud. It has a terrifying corrosive power. And even my father is very wary, saying that even a 5-step could be hit. Killing 1 step is as easy as turning over a hand. Moreover, as long as the amount is used appropriately, this bloody mud can even cause a heavenly venerable to suffer from all sorts of ailments. They have to use all their strength to resist, but they themselves are as weak as trapping a chicken. Luo Tongfang shook his head. Junior brother, why can't you change this lecherous habit of yours? Otherwise, your achievements would have long surpassed mine. However, Hao Jing laughed heartily. Senior brother, if people only know how to cultivate, then so what if I give you an immortal life? After we kill Ling Han, you will be in charge of extracting his soul and refining it into a heavenly venerable symbol, while I will be in charge of saving people. That little girl Ling, she will definitely be moved by me. But she doesn't know that her abducted mother has become my slave, and I can manipulate and toy with her as I please. Hao Jing's eyes shone. Luo Tongfang revealed a look of disdain. He actually didn't like this junior brother who only cared about women, but who asked him to be his master's only son. When do we act? He asked. As soon as possible, Hao Jing said. I have now completely infiltrated the Ling family. No one will suspect me, and they won't even think that I would poison their food. You've already become a heavenly venerable, and you still need to eat. Luo Tongfang was surprised. You don't know, but this family is full of foodies. Outside, Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. Ordinary people's evaluation of him was a demon king, a freak, a pervert, and so on. Sai glutton. Yet Hu Niu laughed loudly. Niu is a foodie. Then her expression turned cold, and she revealed her killing intent. Ling Han, let's go kill these 2 bad guys. Ling Han nodded. All right. He hadn't made a move all this while because he was waiting for Luo Tongfang to arrive. Now that the main character had arrived, and he completely understood their trump card, there was naturally no need to be polite. Hao Jing and Luo Tongfang were still discussing the details when they heard the sound of the door knocking. The 2 of them exchanged a look, and both looked surprised. Who is it? I'll come. Luo Tongfang walked over to open the door. With a creak, the door opened, and they saw a young man standing at the door. Beside him was an indescribably beautiful young girl, but there was a mischievous look on her face. You are? He asked after some thought. At present, he was still pretending to be an ascending origin tier, so the aura he exuded was not very strong. Ling Han. Yet Hao Jing had heard clearly from behind, and his expression involuntarily changed drastically. They had just been discussing how to harm him, but the latter suddenly appeared at the door. How could he not be moved? Hong. Luo Tongfang immediately released his cultivation, and the aura he exuded with a single step was like a wild wave of the sea. Chapter 2832. Ling Han, right? I've heard so much about you, Luo Tongfang said. He had recovered the aura of 1 step, with strong self-confidence. Which celestial venerable wasn't the most talented? At the same 1 step, who was weaker than who? So, although Luo Tongfang agreed with Hao Jing's method of using blood mud to plot, he was still proud in his heart, thinking that even without this method, he could suppress Ling Han. But Hao Jing did something that Luo Tongfang didn't expect at all. He directly broke through the wall, and his figure shot rapidly, escaping without a trace. This made Luo Tongfang angry and furious. Hao Jing's action meant that he didn't believe he could defeat Ling Han at all, and didn't even have the qualifications to fight. So he fled immediately. Fuck. Luo Tongfang was furious. He looked at Ling Han darkly, thinking that if he plucked off Ling Han's head and threw it in front of Hao Jing, what expression would this guy have? Hey, don't let your imagination run wild. Ling Han laughed. He didn't chase after Hao Jing, because Hu Niu had already left. If a pseudo-celestial venerable could escape with a 2nd step attack, that would be really funny. Did he think everyone was Ling Han? Ling Han, in a battle of the same cultivation level, I, Luo Tongfang, will not lose to anyone, Luo Tongfang said confidently. Oh, Ling Han nodded. Do you have any last words? Go die. Luo Tongfang attacked. Wang, a celestial symbol immediately flashed on his hand. It was one of the 7 legendary symbols, which could increase his power by 4 times. At the same time, he also used a secret technique, and a blood wolf appeared behind him. It howled at the sky, summoning a blood moon that exuded endless coldness and loneliness. Hong, the blood wolf, swallowed the moon, and Luo Tongfang also launched this attack. His right hand stretched out, turning into a wolf claw that had indestructible might. Ling Han shook his head and very casually slapped. Pa, this palm could not be blocked at all. Luo Tongfang's arm was first broken, and then it pressed down on his chest. A terrifying power surged out, instantly shattering his chest. Luo Tongfang's face was filled with shock, and he stared incredulously at Ling Han. Peng, his entire body was torn into pieces. His head was his head, his feet were his feet, and his hands were his hands. They were both first-step heavenly venerables, but he was actually not a match for Ling Han. He finally understood why Hao Jing fled the moment he arrived at Ling Han's place. It was because Hao Jing knew that he was no match for Ling Han. The gap between them was as wide as the heavens. He had a despondent look on his face. They were both first-step heavenly venerables, but why was he so much weaker than Ling Han? Ling Han naturally did not care about what he thought. He quickly found a spatial immortal artifact from the other party's body. After scanning it with his divine sense, he took out a jade bottle. He instinctively felt that the thing inside was extremely terrifying. It made his heart pound, and he definitely didn't want to touch it. This was the flesh and blood of an heavenly venerate that had been wildly corroded. Ling Han carefully pulled out the cork of the bottle, only to see traces of black gas emerge from it. These black gas took on various shapes, but they were all poisonous creatures like spiders and centipedes. He squatted down, right beside Luo Tongfang's head. With the suppression of his strength, Luo Tongfang could not reassemble his body and recover from his injuries. Take that thing away! Luo Tongfang cried out in alarm, his face filled with horror. He was even more nervous and afraid than when Ling Han had blown him up with a single punch. Come, this thing was really incredible. It had scared this fellow to death. Ling Han smiled and said, Since you're so afraid, why did you bring it here? And even tried to make me eat it? Speaking of which, though I'm a glutton, I'm not an idiot. Do you think I'll eat this thing? Luo Tongfang thought that if Hao Jing really wanted to do it, he would definitely use some means to cover up this thing, so that no one would be able to see anything strange. Of course, he definitely didn't dare to say that. Your Excellency, I was also deceived by others. Please forgive me this once, he said through clenched teeth. As an heavenly venerate, it took a great deal of courage to say such words. His face flushed red. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. Others travel 1,000 miles to deliver a feather. The gift is light, but the sentiment is heavy. But you travel 10,000 miles to deliver poison. What does that count for? Luo Tongfang was speechless. The only thing he could think of right now was that Hao Jing was the mastermind behind all of this, and he was only delivering something. I really don't understand my junior apprentice brother's actions at all, he said. Ling Han poured out a bit of the bottle's contents. It was a black bloody paste, which he smeared onto one of Luo Tongfang's severed arms. In theory, an heavenly venerate's arm, even if it was a severed arm, should still be indestructible. But as soon as that bloody paste touched it, it instantly began to corrode, turning into a puddle of blood. How poisonous! Ling Han only shook his head at Luo Tongfang, and didn't say anything. Ling Han, Niu has caught him. Peng, Hu Niu leaped in, carrying a person in her hand. It was Hao Jing. How could a pseudo-heavenly venerate possibly escape? Pa! Hu Niu threw Hao Jing onto the ground. Ling Han smiled faintly. When I first saw you, I said that you wouldn't have a good time for long. Now that I see it, I was really right. Hao Jing clenched his teeth tightly, an expression of unwillingness on his face. He didn't know where he had gone wrong. All these years, he had always acted very normally, and didn't reveal the slightest flaw. He smiled tragically. How did you break through? Ling Han didn't hide anything, and recounted what had happened. Hao Jing couldn't help but be furious. He actually lost to the heart of Ling Han's beloved daughter. You protective maniac, Your daughter is already a celestial king. Is there a need to be so nervous? He was filled with hatred. All of this had not happened because his calculations had gone awry, nor was it because he had been careless in his actions. Rather, it was because Ling Han had been so damn protective of his daughter that he had accidentally caught his little tail. He hated. Don't be so unwilling. Even if you don't have any ideas about my little darling. Do you think that a first step and a pseudo-heavenly venerate can take down 3 heavenly venerates? And each has the strength of a third step and a second step respectively? Ling Han shook his head. Hao Jing was really delusional. This blood mud was indeed very powerful. But how could it be so easy to make him fall for it? I admit defeat, Hao Jing said with a lowered head. What do you want? Ling Han was surprised. You think that if you give me something, I will spare your life? Hao Jing humphed. My father is a 5th step heavenly venerate, Hao Tianjun. If you kill me, no matter which plane you flee to, my father will find you and kill you. Ling Han thought carefully and murmured, have I killed the 5th step son? After a while, he shook his head. I've killed too many people, I really can't remember. It doesn't matter, if I kill you, I will definitely kill the 5th step son. You. Hao Jing was shocked. This wasn't any glory. Why were you trying so hard to take it? He hurriedly said. Aren't you afraid of my father's revenge? Ha! Do you think that if I'm afraid, I will let a beast who has ideas about my family go? Ling Han shook his head. Trash like you. It's better for you to die early and reincarnate. Pung, he punched down, and Hao Jing was instantly smashed into pieces. Chapter 2834. Lin Xiaoyang shook his head. He was also very confused about this. Logically speaking, anyone with a bit of rationality should know that cooperating with madness was like asking a tiger for its skin. The final result would definitely be a tragedy, because madness's goal was to devour the entire Yuan world, replace it, and become the supreme existence that could control everything. But if there was no instigation, would things have developed to this point? Even 6th-step powerhouses like Lin Xiaoyang, Zhou Heng, and Chu Hao couldn't find out the person behind the scenes, let alone Ling Han. After all, the only 6th-step powerhouses he knew were limited to Lin Xiaoyang and the other 2. He couldn't possibly suspect the 3 of them, right? The outside world is chaotic. You guys can stay here for now, Lin Xiaoyang said. Ling Han considered for a moment, and then accepted Lin Xiaoyang's kind intentions. The outside world was indeed chaotic, and in a situation where there was no heavenly venerable tier symbol appearing, there was no need for him to run around. Then, why couldn't he cultivate anywhere? Thank you, Senior. Ling Han moved out. He moved all the people of Ling City over, and tried to inform the Rain Emperor and the others who were traveling far away. After everyone had arrived, they built a new city near the Lin clan. It was a good place to lean against a big tree and enjoy the shade. Although this place was still over 10,000 kilometers away from the Lin clan, it was completely within the Lin clan's sphere of influence. In fact, it was even the central region. Therefore, who would dare to invade? Even if everyone knew that no 7th-step celestial venerable could come back from the foreign battlefield, as long as the 7th-step celestial venerable was alive, who would dare to disturb their Dao field? After everything was settled, Ling Han began to cultivate in seclusion. Since he couldn't obtain more celestial venerable symbols, he could only use a large amount of time to increase his cultivation speed. Time passed quickly, and soon 100 million years had passed. For a celestial venerable, 100 million years wasn't long. Even for a celestial king, it was actually only a slightly long time. However, many major events happened in these 100 million years. A large number of celestial venerables were slaughtered. Because of the celestial venerable symbols, a hunt for celestial venerables was set off. Not to mention 4th and 5th-step celestial venerables, even 6th-step celestial venerables encountered danger. This wasn't an alarmist statement. At least 3 6th-step celestial venerables were besieged and killed. When the news spread, the entire world was shaken. What is the concept of 6 steps aside from the 7th-step experts? There were no stronger ones. Now those 7th-step experts were fighting against frenzy in the foreign battleground. Under such circumstances, Even a sixth-step expert had fallen. Wasn't that shocking? No one knew how the 3 sixth-step cultivators had died. Some speculated that they had been surrounded by dozens of sixth-step cultivators before they had Dao transformation. Some speculated that it was even more exaggerated. They said that a 7th-step cultivator had secretly attacked and caused the 3 sixth-step cultivators to not even have a chance to escape. There was no answer to this question, so the Grand Empyreans became even more uneasy. Everyone was in danger. According to incomplete statistics, the number of Empyreans that had perished in the past 100 million years had reached around a fifth. It was unknown how many times more than the casualty rate in the foreign battlefields. Zhou Heng and Chu Hao had also moved their clansmen over. The 3 great sixth-step experts worked together to keep watch. In other years, a sixth-step cultivator would be able to suppress the world, but the current situation was different. Even a sixth-step cultivator had to work together because the other 6 steps had already joined hands. A sixth-step cultivator who was alone could only be defeated one by one. In fact, even if the 3 great sixth steps joined hands, it wouldn't be very safe. In other Empyrean alliances, there were at least 7 or 8 sixth steps, and at most 10 sixth steps. Therefore Lin Xiaoyang, Chu Hao, and Zhou Heng were still looking for new allies. However, the 3 of them were fellow disciples, so of course, they could trust each other completely. If they wanted to recruit a 4th person into their team, just trust alone was very difficult. Moreover, it was also very difficult for the other 6 steps to trust the 3 of them. After all, the 3 of them were a family. They wouldn't join hands to harm themselves. Because of this, Lin Xiaoyang and the other 2 were still looking for allies after 100 million years. After Ling Han came out of seclusion and understood the situation, he began his long seclusion cultivation again. He didn't like to live under someone else's roof. If he wanted to settle down in this chaotic world, there was only one thing that could guarantee his strength. In the beginning, Ling Han would come out of seclusion once every 200 to 300 million years, or a billion years to understand the situation. However, the feedback he got every time was about the same. A large number of Empyreans were killed again. It was as if Empyreans had become cabbages that could be harvested at will. Fortunately, Lin, Zhou, and Chu Hao, the 3 great sixth steps cultivators, and with the power of Lin Luo's 7 steps, this place was very safe. No one attacked, but no one knew how long this kind of safety and peace would last. After more than 10 billion years, Ling Han finally advanced his cultivation to the late stage of 1st step. He made up his mind that he wouldn't come out of seclusion until he reached the 2nd step. 1 billion years, 5 billion years, 10 billion years, time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 20 billion years had passed. Ling City had long since developed, and the Rain Emperor, Yi and other elites all returned. Later, even Ji Wuming, Fire Hibiscus, and Shichan Zi joined Ling City. After all, they all came from the celestial realm, and when they encountered danger, they would naturally come together. Ling Han continued to cultivate in seclusion, which made the Empress and Hunyou feel bored, and they also began to cultivate in seclusion. Thus, after generations of reproduction, the current newcomers didn't know that there were people like Ling Han and the Empress in Ling City. They only knew the Rain Emperor, E.G. Wuming, the large black dog, and other Empyreans. At this moment, there was big news that the Rong clan and Ying clan were going to form an alliance with the Lin, Zhou, and Chu clans. The ancestor of the Rong clan, Rong Tianyu, and the old master of the Ying clan, Ying Jiuyang, were both elites of 6th step. Once they formed an alliance with Lin Xiaoyang and the others, their strength would definitely increase greatly increasing their safety. Rong Yang, the son of Rong Tianyu, cultivated for 7 epochs, and went step by step from Celestial King tier to Empyrean tier, and then to 4th step. Though he wasn't as nature-defying as Lin Yulian and Xan Chihu, he was terrifyingly stable, and similarly showed his astonishing talent in martial art. Now, Rong Yang represented his father, and came to the Lin clan to discuss the details of the alliance. Ling City could barely be considered a member of the Lin clan now, and naturally heard of this matter. It's said that Rong Yang wants to tie the knot with Lin Piao Shui and solidify the alliance through marriage. Hiss, Fairy Piao Shui is going to marry someone. My God, I'm going to collapse. What are you collapsing for? Even if Lady Lin Piao Shui doesn't marry Rong Yang, would she marry you? Fuck, can't I think about it? The news from thousands of miles away also spread to Ling City, causing many people to discuss it. A new sixth-step Empyrean joining the alliance was shocking news. And in the midst of this heated discussion, a young man also came to Ling City. His name was Rong Xingquan. I heard that the owner of Ling City, Ling Han, once obtained an Empyrean symbol. Rong Xingquan asked the person beside him. If Ling Han was present, he would be able to recognize this person at a glance. 95 Empyrean, he nodded and said. In the extraterritorial battlefield, Ling Han did indeed obtain an Empyrean symbol. When he said this, there was a hint of ruthlessness in his eyes. Chapter 2835. Among the celestial venerables who had come from the celestial territory, the 9-5 had the lowest achievements. Wu Lu had almost reached the second step in the celestial territory. After coming to the frost plane, he had soared to the sky and reached the fourth step not long ago. After all, the celestial territory was small, but those who could reach the first step in the celestial territory were all geniuses among geniuses. Qinghu was only slightly inferior. He had reached the peak of the third step long ago and could break through at any time. Feng Qing was even more domineering. She had cultivated her own celestial venerate symbol. Although her cultivation level was not as high as Wu Li's, she might catch up and eventually reach the fifth step. The original born heavenly venerate had just reached the third step, but he had started from the celestial king level. To be able to become a celestial venerate in such a short time, one could imagine how strong he was. But the 9-5 celestial venerate? He had reached the third step long ago, but he had been stuck at the early stage of the third step for so many years and had not made any progress. In comparison, he was overshadowed. Now that the situation was so turbulent, the 9-5 celestial venerate could not stand alone and could only submit to Rong Tianyu. It had been very difficult for him to cross paths with Ling Han again. Who would have thought that Rong Tianyu would form an alliance with the Lin family? Therefore, he had been fortunate enough to follow the delegation. Rong Xingquan was Rong Yang's cousin. He was far from being as monstrous as Rong Yang, but with a big tree behind him, he had also cultivated to the 9th level of the heaven. When the 9-5 celestial venerate came to the Lin family and learned that Ling Han was nearby, he had an idea and had encouraged Rong Xingquan. What kind of personality did Rong Xingquan have? He was completely arrogant. He thought that his uncle was a sixth-step powerhouse and was almost invincible. Naturally, he did not care about anyone else. For example, he did not dare to provoke the Lin family, the Zhou family, and the Chu family. But what was the Ling family? The strongest powerhouse was only at the second step. He did not care. He wanted to obtain Ling Han's celestial venerate symbol and give it to Rong Yang to flatter his cousin. After all, he knew that in Rong Tianyu's heart, he was far less important than Rong Yang. Of course, he had to flatter his cousin. Perhaps one day, a great opportunity would befall him, and he would become a celestial venerate. Thus, he had come after being instigated by the 9-5 heavenly venerate. Rong Xingquan clasped his hands behind his back as he strode forward. The 9-5 heavenly venerate followed suit, always lagging behind. Rong Xingquan was very satisfied. What he didn't know was which celestial venerable wasn't arrogant. How could they possibly lower their heads to a 9th heaven? This was just the 9-5 celestial lord making use of him. His intention was naturally to make him stand out to gain glory. With Xian Quan's arrogance and Ling Han's temper, the result would definitely be terrible. Perhaps this idiot would be directly killed. At that time, Rong Yang would definitely make a move. A fourth-step heavenly venerable couldn't suppress a small Ling city, taking 10,000 steps back, even if Rong Yang couldn't deal with Ling Cheng. As long as something happened to him, a sixth-step martial artist would be enraged and Ling Han would definitely die. Naturally, the location of Ling Han's location was no secret. They just had to ask anyone to find out. Thus, Rong Xingquan, and Heavenly Lord 95 were able to quickly find the place. Rong Xingquan revealed a disdainful smile as he strode toward the door. Sir, who are you looking for? Of course, there was a guard at the entrance of the Ling residence, and he immediately asked Rong Xingquan. Because Ling Han hated overbearing methods, the servants of the Ling residence were also very polite. They wouldn't show off just because there were 3 celestial venerables in the residence. However, Rong Xingquan didn't buy it at all. He thought that since he was the nephew of a 6th-step heavenly venerable, everyone in the world should be respectful to him. Thus, he only looked at the guard with disdain and said, "Ask Ling Han to come out and kneel to welcome me." When the guard heard this, he instantly flew into a rage. It was true that the servants of the Ling family didn't have the habit of being overbearing, but they also didn't have the habit of letting others walk all over their heads. Who didn't know Ling Han's temper? As long as his own people didn't do anything wrong, he would support them to the end and wouldn't be afraid of anyone. Moreover, this time, Rong Xingquan had directly insulted Ling Han. How could this guard not be angry? He immediately drew out a long halberd and aimed it at Rong Xingquan. Menacingly, he said, "Apologize immediately and take back your words just now. A mere servant also dares to shout at me." Rong Xingquan scoffed. He stretched out a hand and pressed down on that guard. That guard hurriedly fought back, but he was only in the ascending origin tier. So how could he possibly match a 9th heaven tier cultivator? Pa! Rong Xingquan's power transformed into a large green hand, which had already grabbed that guard. "Beg for mercy from me, and I can spare your life," Rong Xingquan declared proudly. "Hey!" That guard spat at Rong Xingquan, but how could it possibly land on Rong Xingquan's body? It was blocked by a protective light shield. "You're courting death." Rong Xingquan raised an eyebrow, his killing intent overflowing. With a thought, that large green hand suddenly tightened. Pa! That guard was immediately crushed, turning into a puddle of blood. "Trash who overestimates his own abilities," he said in disdain, and strode towards the main doors. Who is it that actually dares to commit violence in the Ling residence? A person flew down. Rong Xingquan glanced at him and said, "You are Ling Han?" He had seen Ling Han's appearance before, and it was exactly the appearance in front of him. However, the other's cultivation level was only 9th heaven. "I am Ling Hua," this person said. His eyes swept over, and immediately discovered that the guard's puddle of blood had not completely fallen. His expression focused, and he sensed slightly. He had already captured that guard's remnant soul, and everything that had happened previously all surfaced in his mind. He couldn't help but be furious. This person had come to the Ling family and killed people indiscriminately. How arrogant was this? Ling Hua was formed from one of the 9 source powers that Ling Han had obtained. Later on, he had set them all free one by one, allowing them to possess their own sense of self. The source powers of heaven and earth had their own advantages, and they were born with the characteristics of celestial kings. However, their limitations were also very obvious. Because they were born from the laws of heaven and earth, it was naturally impossible for them to surpass the laws themselves. Hence, 9th heaven was their peak, and it was impossible for them to surpass this level and become a celestial venerable. "How dare you?" Ling Hua said sinisterly. Previously, the 9 of them had always been going around to train, and after reaching 9th heaven, they could not advance any further. Hence, they had come to the Ling family and considered themselves as Ling Han's followers. Hence, it was natural that he was furious now. Rong Xingquan revealed a disdainful expression. "A mere servant dares to spit at me? Don't you deserve to die? What relationship does your surname Ling have with Ling Han? Forget it, I don't care. Hurry up and call Ling Han out, and have him kneel to welcome me." Ling Hua was furious, but he also had the urge to laugh out loud. A mere 9th heaven celestial king actually dared to ask a first-step celestial venerable to kneel to welcome him. It's better for you to be captured obediently and quietly wait for your punishment. He launched an attack, wanting to take Rong Xingquan down. He was not afraid of starting a battle here, because this place had been refined by a few celestial venerables. Every brick had a trace of a celestial venerable's power, and it was not something that a 9th heaven celestial king could break. It was more refreshing to read on one's phone. Chapter 2836. Ling Ho attacked. He was formed from the origin fire of heaven and earth, and now that he had cultivated to the 9th layer of heaven, he attacked with the most top-notch laws of fire. As he punched out, his power condensed into a huge flaming fist that pressed down on Rong Xingquan. Insignificant skill, Rong Xingquan said disdainfully and raised his hand to block. Bang! When the two of them collided, their bodies trembled, and the rules turned into violent energy that overflowed, forming a terrifying shockwave. Luckily, this was the Ling residence. Every brick and stone had been refined and was incomparably sturdy. Otherwise, not only would the Ling residence be destroyed, the entire Ling city would be destroyed. Oh, you actually have some strength. Rong Xingquan revealed a surprised expression. He had wanted to suppress his opponent with one attack, but he did not expect Ling Huo's strength to be so strong. Of course, the primordial fire of heaven and earth had already cultivated to the peak of the 9th level. How could he not be strong? Ling Huo roared loudly, and had already charged back. Bang, bang, bang. The two fought intensely, but it was hard to determine who was stronger. Rong Xingquan felt a little embarrassed. He was the descendant of a superpower, but he could not suppress a small guard of Ling City. How could he endure this? Xiao xiao xiao. A few more figures flew over, but they all looked almost exactly the same. They were Ling Mu, Ling Tu, and the other primordial fire of heaven and earth. Lil Hua, do you need help? Ling Shui smiled. There's no need. I can suppress him, said Ling Hua. He held his breath. What a joke. Even if you all attack together, how can you suppress me? Rong Xingquan was furious. He took a light breath, and his body immediately shone, filled with a terrifying pressure. His battle strength instantly increased by at least 10 times. Ling Ho was immediately under great pressure, and he fell into a disadvantage. This was because Rong Xingquan had used the Empyrean Precious technique, and his battle strength naturally increased. Attacked together, Ling Tu and the rest naturally could not watch Ling Ho be defeated or even killed, and they all charged over. This was not a fair one-on-one battle, but Rong Xingquan had come to the Ling residence to provoke them. What rules did they need to follow? They would just kill him. So what if you all come at me together? In front of me, you're all trash. Rong Xingquan laughed. His hands flipped, and boundless energy surged out, transforming into profound runes. His combat strength reached an incomparably terrifying level in a short time. It was impossible for a 9th firmament immortal king to circulate an Empyrean Paragon skill for an extended period of time. Typically, it would only last for about 2 hours. However, during this period of time, a 9th firmament immortal king could erupt with combat strength close to that of a quasi-Empyrean. It was terrifying. Although Ling Hua and the others joined hands, they were still suppressed by Rong Xingquan. No matter what they did, they were unable to turn the situation around. After a few hundred moves, Rong Xingquan threw out a heavy punch, instantly sending Ling Hua and the other 8 flying, causing them to vomit blood and lose the ability to continue fighting. Fortunately, they were formed from the source energy of heaven and earth, so their vitality was extremely tenacious. They wouldn't die so easily. Trash will always be trash, sneered Rong Xingquan. At the same time, he suppressed the boiling emotions in his chest. Using the Empyrean technique for so long was actually a great burden on him, but he wanted to save face no matter what, so he refused to show it. Ling Hua and the other 8 were speechless. A loss was a loss. Rong Xingquan laughed heartily. His gaze swept across the area. At this time, many people ran over from the Ling residence. However, they were all servants of the residence, and there were only a few immortal kings. Naturally, they were no match for Rong Xingquan. Hurry up and get Ling Han to come out and kneel to welcome me. He regained his arrogance. Father is still in closed-door cultivation, and has no time to receive guests. A sweet voice rang out, and a peerless beauty walked out. There were 9 rays of light revolving around her body, proving that she was a 9th firmament immortal king. This was Ling Shi. In fact, she had cultivated to the 9th firmament long ago. However, in order to strengthen her foundation, and walked the path of her parents to become the strongest Empyrean. She had only tempered her temperament. When the time was right, she would walk through the plains one by one. Rong Xingquan glanced at her, and his eyes involuntarily lit up. Beautiful, too beautiful. Although he had tasted all kinds of beauties, he had never seen a beauty as beautiful as this one in front of him. Moreover, this woman was as pure as a pool of clear water, making people feel comfortable just by looking at her. "And who are you?" he asked, his attitude still arrogant. No matter how beautiful a woman was in his heart, she was just a supplement. It was impossible for him to pamper her like a treasure. Although Ling Shi was already angry in her heart, because of her gentle nature, she did not show it on her face. She was incomparably quiet and said, "My name is Ling Shi, and my father is Ling Han." "Oh." Rong Xingquan nodded. "I really didn't expect that Ling Han actually had such a beautiful daughter." He revealed an evil smile. Come, this time, Ling Han was going to offer more than just an Empyrean symbol. "Who am I? How honorable is my status? How precious is my time?" he asked in succession. "Immediately get Ling Han to come out and kneel to welcome me, or else I will tear down this broken city of yours." Too arrogant, he was really too arrogant. Putting aside the fact that the servants of the Ling residence were unable to restrain their anger, even Ling Shi's personality, that was as calm as water, was stirred. She looked at Rong Xingquan calmly, and said, "You came to the Han residence, killed people, acted violently, and even wanted my father to kneel to welcome you. Do you really think that there is no one in the Ling family?" When she said the last sentence, she finally revealed the domineering aura that a ninth heaven celestial king should have. In truth, she was soft on the outside, but tough on the inside. She had inherited the Empress's pride and Ling Han's tenacity, but it had always been covered up by her tranquility and rarely showed. "Beauty, fighting and killing are not suitable for you. You should lean on my leg and fight for my favor." Rong Xingquan laughed loudly, not caring that this was the daughter of two Empyrean venerables. No matter how good Ling Shi's temper was, she could not possibly endure this kind of humiliation. Moreover, she had already decided to make a move. Hong Shi moved, bringing with her a boundless power of regulation, and charged towards Rong Xingquan. "What?" Rong Xingquan was shocked when he saw this move. The technique that Ling Shi used was indeed limited to the range of Celestial King tier. But in this strike, there were more than a dozen top-level regulations circulating at the same time. This was far too terrifying. It was equivalent to a dozen or so peak stage ninth heaven cultivators joining forces, and moreover, their minds were connected, and their coordination was incredibly tacit. This was not a simple addition of 1 plus 1, but rather had been raised to a whole new level. Rong Xingquan hurriedly retreated, and then channeled the Celestial Paragon technique. Otherwise, it was extremely likely that he would not be able to withstand 10 moves from his opponent. He did not dare to receive the attack at all, and only when the Celestial Paragon technique was truly channeled did a terrifying light burst out of his body, and his power instantly increased by more than 10 times. Only then did he clash with Ling Shi's attack. Pung! Ling Shi was instantly forced back by him. No matter how freakish she was, if she was limited to the level of regulations, then there was no way that she could match the Celestial Paragon technique. Unleashed by a ninth heaven celestial king, this was a great move that surpassed the level of regulations, and could even kill a pseudo-celestial venerable. "Ha ha ha, is this all you've got?" Rong Xingquan hooted, channeling the Celestial Paragon technique. Not only did he possess the battle prowess of a pseudo-celestial venerable, but he was also at the top of this level. "Beauty, you'd better obediently follow this young master." Ling Shi's long and shapely eyebrows rose, and she suddenly struck out with a palm. Pung! Rong Xingquan was instantly sent flying. "You talk too much nonsense." Chapter 2838. The Empress's personality was the complete opposite of Ling Shi's. Ling Shi was quiet and didn't fight. She was more willing to keep the peace when things happened, and she didn't care even if she suffered a little. But the Empress was different. She was truly condescending, and thought that everyone in the world should worship and revere her. She could not tolerate the slightest bit of disrespect. Now that someone actually wanted to kill her daughter, how could she not seethe with killing intent? Die! The Empress charged out. Boom! Her aura swelled endlessly, and even the heavens were unable to suppress it. Those bolts of lightning were only able to travel several thousand meters before vanishing. The 95 heavenly venerate hurriedly went to fight. Bang 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 very quickly, they fought from the ground to the sky, each displaying their own unique skills. The battle was incomparably intense. The Empress had just broken through to the second step, but she had gathered the power of 100 planes, and they were all high-level planes. How powerful would she be when she reached the peak of the first step? Now, although she was only in the early stage of the second step, her power had reached the early stage of the third step, which was a whole tier higher. She attacked furiously, her black hair fluttering in the wind. She was both beautiful and noble, but there was also a dangerous aura about her. The 95 heavenly venerable was astonished. He discovered that he was actually unable to suppress the Empress. There was clearly a gap of a realm between them. It should have been an absolute suppression. Damn, are all the people in the Ling family perverts? The 95 heavenly venerable was unable to accept this. Previously, when he had been in the celestial realm, he had been one of the only 3 heavenly venerables, and he could decide the fate of all the beings in the world with a single thought. Whether it was Ling Han or the Empress, they were incomparably insignificant in his eyes. However, he had never thought that only a little over an epoch had passed, and not only was Ling Han able to contend against him, even the Empress was capable of doing so now. What's wrong with this world? This is crazy. His killing intent was boiling. Since this family was so monstrous, he had to get rid of them as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be his turn to live in fear in the future. Boom, he went all out. His Empyrean treasure artifact, precious techniques, and symbols were all unleashed, instantly pushing his battle prowess to the limit. The destructive force of their clash was too great. Space shattered, to the extent where time was thrown into disorder. A long river of time appeared, indistinct and indistinct. Countless images appeared, all of them blurry and indistinct. However, when they arrived at a certain scene, it was the scene of Ling Han, the Empress, Hunyo, and the others being pursued by the 95 heavenly venerable. In the past, in order to cultivate the cosmic everlasting body, Ling Han and the others had needed to enter the end of the river of time. In the end, they had been mercilessly attacked by the 95 heavenly lord. Fortunately, the heavenly lord of origin life had been present at that time, and they had been able to resolve such a great crisis. Only, after leaving the river of time, their memories were completely erased, unable to remember anything. However, this was the fiery frost plane, which had its own time law. When the two experts clashed, a river of time appeared, and the scene from back then reappeared. In the blink of an eye, the two powerhouses regained their memories. No wonder I had the urge to kill you the moment I saw you. So that's how it is, said 95 in a sinister voice. He had an indescribable hatred for Ling Han. He had always thought that he was worried that Ling Han would become a threat to him once he grew stronger. He had never expected that there would be such a grudge between them. Meanwhile, the Empress was even more sinister. This old bastard actually dared to hunt her down? He was courting death. She was extremely furious, and pressed out with a hand. Pung 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 pung. The stars in the sky fell like rain, and even those that were far away were no exception. They were completely unable to withstand the might of her aura. This time, the Empress was serious. A blurry symbol appeared on her forehead, yet it exuded a mighty aura that could suppress the heavens. Her hand pressed down, an endless light surged. It was as if the entire world was collapsing, and time was being destroyed. Eternity shatter, the Empress said. Boom, her hand slammed down. When she took her second step, she had automatically grasped the heavenly venerate symbol. It was just like when Ling Han had taken a step forward, directly increasing her power by 22 times. Moreover, she had also cultivated her own heavenly venerate technique. With these two factors activated together, her battle prowess was pushed to a whole new level. What? The 95 heavenly venerate exclaimed in shock. His fists clashed with the Empress, yet he was no match for her at all. He had only grasped the 7 legendary symbols, And that was how many times his power had increased? Pung! The 9-5 heavenly venerate was instantly sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair, but the blood could not fall to the ground. It was immediately obliterated by the heaven and earth. Heavenly venerates were envied by the heaven and earth. If they could be destroyed, then the heaven and earth would definitely not be merciful. The empress gave a battle cry and chased after him, continuing to attack madly. The 9-5 heavenly venerate could only parry her attacks. No, he could only be beaten. Presently, the empress's battle prowess had soared to the late stage of the third step, and even if the 9-5 heavenly venerate used his full power, he could only reach the middle stage of the third step. If there was only this little bit of difference, then the only thing he could do was to be beaten. Damn it! The 9-5 heavenly venerate roared in fury. He was completely unable to escape from this kind of situation. This was really too great a blow to his pride. However, after being struck a few dozen times, he finally knew that he could not possibly be a match for the empress. If he continued to fight, it was really possible that he would die here. He turned around resentfully, descended, and was just about to grab Rong Xingquan and flee together. Pung the empress's palm descended, an endless divine light surged. Pa! Rong Xingquan did not even have the chance to struggle, and was crushed into pieces by this peerlessly domineering power. Even Ling she could not possibly match the power of the third step, what more him? The 9-5 heavenly venerate faltered, and then immediately turned around and left, without the slightest hesitation. Very good. The person was already dead, and he had also tried his best. No matter what, it could not possibly be attributed to him. Everything was within his expectations, though it was not Ling Han that had made a move. If Ling Han or the empress had made a move, what difference would it make? He hurriedly fled far away. Even if the empress's present battle prowess had surpassed his, it was completely unrealistic for her to catch up to a heavenly venerate of the same level. She only chased for a few steps before giving up and descending. Mother! Ling she pounced, and threw herself into the empress's arms. The empress lightly stroked her daughter's beautiful hair, and then pushed Ling Shi away. She had never liked this kind of clinging, aside from when she was with Ling Han. Mother! That person seems to have quite a background. Ling Shi was naturally long since used to this kind of attitude of the empress. Who? The empress was slightly indifferent. Ling Shi couldn't help but be speechless. You've just killed him with a single slap. And when you turned around, you actually forgot. She pointed at the place where Rong Xingquan had died and said, There, that's him. Just a stray dog, the empress said disdainfully. Ling Shi shook her head. His background is definitely not simple. Even a third step heavenly venerate has to listen to his orders. The empress smirked coldly. How could a ninth step heavenly venerate possibly command a heavenly venerate? Not to mention 3 steps, even 1 step was impossible. How intelligent was she? She immediately realized that the 9-5 heavenly venerate wanted to borrow a knife to kill him. Don't be afraid, she said. If a 6th step heavenly venerate really attacked, Lin Xiaoyang would definitely make a move. This was the territory of the Lin clan. Ling Shi could only nod. She very quickly broke into a smile. Mother, you've broken through to the 2nd step? The empress nodded. She glanced at her daughter. You should also go to another plane. Your foundation is more or less polished. But at this time, Ling Shi hesitated. With me and your father here, what is there to worry about? The empress said incredibly domineeringly. Chapter 2839. After Heavenly Venerate 9-5 escaped, he immediately went to the Lin family. Rong Yang was the representative of a 6th-step Celestial Venerable, and was also a 4th-step Celestial Venerable, so he was naturally a distinguished guest of the Lin family. He was arranged to stay in an incomparably elegant courtyard. The spirit qi here had solidified, and immortal herbs grew like ordinary flowers. Knock, knock, knock. The 9-5 Skylord knocked on the courtyard door. The door was clearly open, but he did not dare to enter without being invited. A 4th-step Empyrean could suppress him with a single hand. And now that the world was too chaotic, the 9-5 Empyrean had to grab onto the Rong family's thigh, so he naturally had to be even more respectful. Come in. A clear voice came from inside. The 9-5 Heavenly Venerate entered. After taking a few steps, he saw a white-robed young man, sitting on a stone chair in the garden, sipping on fragrant tea. He was Rong Yang, the only son of the sixth-step Emperor Rong Tianyu. His talent was astonishing. He had only cultivated for 7 epochs, yet he had already reached the 4th step. Even the 9-5 Emperor would be jealous of him, because he had cultivated for dozens of epochs, and was still only at the 1st step. Although the 9-5 had reached the 3rd step, he had already used up all of his accumulated momentum. Unless he could obtain a large number of Empyrean symbols, it would be impossible for him to make any further progress. Greetings, Lord Rong. Empyrean 95 cupped his hands in greeting. Empyrean was just a collective term, but different realms meant that their statuses were naturally completely different. Rong Yang nodded slightly, still sipping his tea. What happened? Rong Xingquan is dead. The 9-5 Skylord lowered his head slightly. Rong Yang's brows immediately jumped. Hong, a powerful aura flowed out, and the celestial medicines in the surroundings immediately withered. They were not killed by power, but rather because his aura was too powerful, and even the celestial medicines could not withstand it. Heavenly Lord 9-5 also felt a slight tightness in his chest. He felt so uncomfortable that he wanted to vomit blood. He recounted everything in its entirety, without any distortion. However, he omitted the part where he had encouraged Rong Xingquan, emphasizing that Rong Xingquan had made this trip in order to obtain the Empyrean symbol for Rong Yang. Rong Yang was silent. However, the air around him began to boil and then shatter, revealing numerous tiny holes in the void. Heavenly Venerate 9-5 couldn't help but feel shocked. If he used his full strength, he could shatter the void. However, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it as easily as Rong Yang. Even Rong Yang was only at the early stage of the 4th step. Since you went with Xingquan, why didn't you protect him? Rong Yang finally spoke. This is my fault. The 9-5 Heavenly Lord lowered his head, and didn't try to defend himself. He had long since thought that no matter how perfectly he managed to shake off the blame, Rong Xingquan's death meant that he would have to shoulder some responsibility. Therefore, he did not explain and directly admitted his mistake. Rong Yang looked at him deeply, and did not continue to blame him. As long as one was an Empyrean, they stood at the peak. How could they be easily humiliated? Although it was easy for Empyreans to die now, there were only so many of them. If one died, there would be one less. Perhaps in another epoch, there wouldn't even be one Empyrean per plane. If one wanted to conquer the world, every Empyrean was an important combat force. Rong Yang thought for a moment and said, that Ling Han is the one who repeatedly broke records in the Outer Realm battlefield. Yes, 9-5 replied. He didn't need to hide anything now. He just needed to tell the truth. Of course, he would never take the initiative to bring up the old grudge between him and Ling Han. Someone at 1 step can match someone at 3 steps. This is really amazing. Could Xan Chihu and Lin Yulian have done this? Rong Yang muttered to himself. He shook his head. At least, it was impossible for him to do this. He couldn't even fight by 1 step, because he had only condensed the power of 30 or so planes. Although he was stronger than an Empyrean of the same level, there was a limit to his strength. 3 monsters from 1 sect. Haha, I really want to see them. He finally stood up. No matter what, Rong Xingquan couldn't die in vain. The Ling family had to give him, and the Rong family, an explanation. The Rong family couldn't afford to lose face. Lead the way, he said. Yes. The 9-5 Heavenly Lord lowered his head and smiled. He had sacrificed his dignity, and almost become Rong Xingquan's dog. Finally, it was time to reap the rewards. Lord Rong. Before the two of them left, a servant of the Lin family came in and bowed to Rong Yang. My lord would like to meet you, Lord Rong. Rong Yang was stunned. This so-called lord was of course Lin Xiaoyang. Lin Xiaoyang had been in seclusion, and hadn't had time to meet him. A 6-step Empyrean could make him wait, but Rong Yang didn't have the right to make the 6-step Empyrean wait, and finish his own business first. Thus, after being stunned for a moment, he nodded. Please lead the way. In any case, the Ling family wouldn't move away, so there was no hurry. Rong Yang went to see Lin Xiaoyang first. He didn't expect that Lin Xiaoyang would talk with him for 3 days and 3 nights, finalizing some details of the cooperation. Only then did he let him leave. As soon as he returned to his residence, Rong Yang called the 9-5 Heavenly Lord and charged toward Ling Cheng. He knew that Ling Cheng was attached to the Lin family, but he didn't care. Compared to the alliance of the Rong family, a mere 3-step Empyrean was nothing. He believed that even if he annihilated the entire Ling family, Lin Xiaoyang would at most say a few words to him. In just a short while the 2 Heavenly Lords arrived at Ling Cheng. In comparison, Rong Yang was much more domineering. He directly released the aura of a Heavenly Lord and enveloped the entire Ling Cheng. However, what made him depressed was that although the people of Ling Cheng were trembling under his aura, no one was too flustered. Damn, what was going on? What he didn't know was that Zhang Kailuan had gone to Ling Cheng to challenge him every now and then. So the aura of a Heavenly Lord was nothing to the people of Ling Cheng. Although even a 9th Heaven Celestial King couldn't resist the aura of a Heavenly Lord, their bodies couldn't stand it, and their willpower was already used to it. Rong Yang couldn't be bothered to think about the reasons behind it. He didn't care. Ling Han, come out and meet me, he said. Get lost. Only this voice came from the city. It was the Tsundra Empress. Hee, those who dare to say this to me are either not born yet, or are already dead. Rong Yang said with a sneer. He directly attacked, pressing towards Ling Cheng. Wang, a jade-like hand stretched out, instantly turning into a monstrous giant palm that met the sky. Boom! The 2 giant palms clapped together, and the jade-like hand immediately shattered. Rong Yang's giant palm descended, continuing to press towards Ling Cheng. Wang, one after another, giant hands or giant claws struck out from the city, meeting Rong Yang's giant palm. Pung 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 pung. These attacks were like mantises trying to stop a chariot, immediately shattering when they collided with Rong Yang's giant palm. However, the number of these attacks was extremely considerable. When Rong Yang's giant palm truly descended, the destructive power caused was very limited. Hong, the entire city shook violently, and a large number of houses collapsed, but it didn't cause too much damage. After all, the Emperor's first attack had already dissipated at least 30% of Rong Yang's power. Rong Yang was surprised. He hadn't thought that there would be so many heavenly venerables in Ling Cheng. But it didn't matter. The strongest among these heavenly venerables was only at the 3rd step. Chapter 2840. Why were there so many heavenly venerables in Ling City? Coincidentally, the Rain Emperor Ji Wuming, the heavenly venerable original birth, and the other elites had ended their adventure this time, and just happened to return yesterday. Xiao, multiple figures shot out from the city, standing proudly in the skies. The heavenly venerable original birth, Ji Wuming, the Rain Emperor, the Fire Hibiscus, the large black dog, and the Empress were either at the 1st or 2nd step. The one with the highest cultivation level was the heavenly venerable original birth, who was already at the 3rd step. After all, he was nurtured by the heaven and earth, and had innately surpassed anyone. A bunch of weaklings. Rong Yang did not care. He was at the 4th step, and if he used his full strength, these people would not be a match for him, even if they joined forces. Did you hear that? Get lost. The Empress shouted softly. Rong Yang glanced over, and his eyes lit up involuntarily. The Empress's beauty was too moving, causing his heart to involuntarily waver. However, he was at the 4th step, after all, so how could he so easily fall for beauty? Lord Rong, this is Rong Xingquan's murderer. The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable said timely. Rong Yang nodded, showing a hint of surprise. Though he had guessed this long ago, he had not thought that the Empress would be so beautiful and graceful. His expression was sinister. You are quite bold, even daring to kill a member of my Rong clan. So what if he's killed? What's with all this nonsense? If you keep nagging, I'll kill you as well, the Empress said impatiently. She could not be bothered to say that Rong Xingquan had killed a member of the Ling clan first. What did that matter? If she wanted to kill, she would kill. So arrogant. Rong Yang shook his head. This woman had acted violently before, and now she was still so arrogant in front of him. Did she think he was a seventh-step supreme elite? He stood in the skies, looking down on the masses. You, tie your hands and go to my Rong clan for a lesson. Then, have Ling Han come out and offer up his heavenly venerable symbol, and I will not pursue this matter any further. This was the territory of the Lin clan, after all, and he was not an arrogant guy like Rong Xingquan. Thus, he left some leeway, not wanting to cause a massacre in the city. Get lost. The Empress slapped over, and the force turned into a giant white jade palm that covered the skies. Impudent. Rong Yang was truly angered. So what if a mere second step had the power of a third step? In front of a fourth step, he had to be respectful. He too moved to suppress the Empress. How could a four-step attack be a match for a three-step attack? The heavenly venerable origin-born, Ji Wuming, and the others all moved, joining forces with the Empress to fight against Rong Yang. Boom boom boom, the various Empyreans fought in the sky, causing the world to lose color and the void to collapse. However, even though the Empress and the others had the advantage in numbers, in the face of absolute power, they were still no match for him. They were suppressed by Rong Yang alone, and all of them were in grave danger. They were already giving it their all, activating their heavenly sovereign symbols, treasured artifacts, and secret techniques. However, in the face of Rong Yang's invincible power, they could only suffer heavy injuries. Everyone, including the Empress, was riddled with wounds. It was only because of their willpower that they didn't collapse. However, no matter how strong one's willpower was, it couldn't be eaten. There would always be a time when one couldn't hold on anymore. You've angered me, said Rong Yang coldly. Facing a fourth-step expert, these people didn't have the slightest bit of respect, causing his killing intent to rise. Die! He struck out with a palm, and pa! He was instantly sent flying. A mist of blood sprayed from his body, and he directly fell from the sky. This was still because the Empress and the others had joined forces to block a portion of the power. Otherwise, with a four-step attack, one Empyrean could still survive. Next, Rong Yang fixed his eyes on Ji Wuming. He didn't care whether he killed Yi with a single strike or not. What he wanted was the effect of crushing all living beings. No one could block him, and Ji Wuming was also sent flying. One of his arms was directly torn off by the sharp force. Rong Yang was like a demon god. He was too powerful, and every move he made was invincible. He injured and crippled the Empress, the heavenly venerable of origin birth, and the others. Everyone felt a sense of despair. The difference in strength was too great, and this wasn't something that could be made up for with numbers. If they had to make up for it with numbers, then their numbers would at least be 10 times greater. The higher the cultivation level, the greater the difference in strength between Empyreans. The difference between grasping more and grasping less of the intrinsic power of a Tao origin world was really too great. As for the Lin clan, could it be that they were just sitting there and watching Rong Yang wreak havoc? Extremely far away. Father, are you really not going to make a move? Lin Piaoshui asked. Lin Xiaoyang smiled. I don't have to make a move. But, don't worry. I can sense it. That brat is about to come out of seclusion. Lin Xiaoyang stopped his daughter. Moreover, these people have experienced a life and death crisis. It's also beneficial for them. Lin Piaoshui nodded. She naturally believed in her father's judgment. If he said that Ling Han was about to come out of seclusion, then Ling Han was definitely about to come out of seclusion. After over 20 billion years of bitter cultivation, Ling Han had finally pushed his cultivation level to the peak of the first step. Now he was qualified to break through to the second step. This is still the first step. From the second step onwards, not only do I have to cultivate 6 kinds of intrinsic power, but I also have to continue to increase the power of the plane. This will undoubtedly be even slower. Ling Han sighed, but then he put this problem aside. Could it be that he couldn't break through if he was slow? For other Empyreans, advancing from the first step to the second step was actually about as difficult as advancing from the 9th heaven to the Empyrean level. They were both starting from zero, and it was incomparably difficult. However, for Ling Han, this was indeed a small matter. This was because he had already sensed Su Zi long ago, and he had used Su Zi's energy to temper his physique, causing him to be extremely monstrous, when he was still a celestial king. Now what he needed to do was to once again extract Su Zi's energy, turn it into his own, and be able to directly use it. Wang, his consciousness spread between heaven and earth, instantly capturing countless Su Zi. The higher his cultivation level, the stronger his divine sense would naturally be, and the wider the world he could come into contact with. This was as if his divine sense was a net. The larger the net, the more fish he would naturally be able to catch. Su Zi was this fish. Come on, come on. Wang, his body trembled, and his consciousness actually split apart. A part of it actually entered an unknown space. He immediately realized that this was the void. Boom. The void was extremely violent. This was because there was no matter here. Only 6 kinds of intrinsic power. Su Zi, Heng Zi, Messen, Na Zi, Rainbow Zi, and Qua Zi. The 6 kinds of intrinsic power were all here. But Ling Han could only sense one of them now. What was going on? He had clearly not injected his consciousness into the void. So how had he suddenly run into the void? Besides being shocked, Ling Han also felt an indescribable fear. This meant that he could not perfectly control himself, and a major problem would occur. Suddenly, an indescribable throbbing rose up in him. In the void, a black chain whipped over. No, it would be more accurate to call it a tentacle. Frenzy. Ling Han immediately reacted. But how could there be such a coincidence? His consciousness had just entered the void, and Frenzy had already tracked him down. He could not possibly match Frenzy at all, and he hurriedly retracted his consciousness in a frenzy. Xiao, his consciousness retreated from the void. He was just a hair's breadth away, and Frenzy's tentacles would have touched him. Chapter 2842. I'll carry on. Rongyang swore in his heart. He didn't believe that Ling Han had more high-level Empyrean symbols than him. As long as he could hold on until Ling Han used up all of his high-level Empyrean symbols, it would be his turn to show off his power. Pung 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 pung. He continued to be beaten until his head was bleeding and his arms and legs were broken. It was a miserable sight. But for an Empyrean, as long as their source wasn't damaged and their spiritual sea wasn't broken, they could quickly recover. This had already surpassed the scope of the rules. The intrinsic power of the Yuan world had marvelous effects. However, this only made Rongyang take more beatings. Another 2 hours later, Rongyang was filled with anticipation. He was going to counterattack. Ling Han used the 9th symbol. The 2 Empyrean symbols he used before had appeared when he broke through, and the 9th symbol came from the foreign battleground, condensed from the flesh and blood of countless third-step Empyreans. The 9th symbol only increased his strength by 15 times, far less than the 8th symbol's 27 times, and the 9th symbol's 29 times. But for Rongyang, who had used up 2 high-level Empyrean symbols, it was a lot of pressure. The 3rd Empyrean symbol he used could only increase his strength by 13 times. Although he was already standing on the same level as Ling Han, weakness was weakness. There was nothing to say. Thus he was still at a disadvantage. It was just that the number of times he was beaten was much less. Rongyang was going crazy. Who was the son of a 6th-step Empyrean? Who was the 4th-step Empyrean? He roared, but this couldn't reverse his disadvantage. He was still being beaten, but he had to admit that he was tenacious. He was still fighting tenaciously despite being beaten like this. Ling Han couldn't help but nod. Top geniuses were indeed extraordinary, at least in terms of willpower. All of them were tenacious and indomitable. Not bad. He could beat him to his heart's content. Another 2 hours later, Rongyang's eyes turned cold. Do you have any more high-level Empyrean symbols? I'll let you have a go. What is a foundation? 8 symbols on his back lit up at the same time. Using 8 Empyrean symbols at the same time was crazy. The power of the Empyrean symbols could not be superimposed. But Ling Han's eyes tightened. Rongyang wasn't such a fool. So using 8 symbols at the same time only proved one thing. He had mastered the combination of symbols. 8. That was too shocking. Boom! Rongyang's attack shocked Ling Han. It wasn't that the power was too great, but that it was too small. It only increased his strength by 12 times. That was 8 heavenly venerate symbols. Ling Han thought about it and understood. These should be 8 low-level celestial venerable symbols. Didn't Lin Luo divide the celestial venerable symbols into 9 levels? Then these should be of the 9th stream. Every symbol's bonus effect was less than 10 times. Therefore, the combination of 8 would increase the power bonus to more than 10 times. This was because these were originally 9th-rate Empyrean symbols, but after combining together, they had advanced to the 8th rate. This was already very impressive. Rong Yang was very confident. Ling Han had already used up 3 heavenly venerate symbols. 1 was an 8th-rate symbol, and 2 were 7th-rate symbols. Even if there were any left, they would at most be 8th-rate symbols. This combination symbol of his had increased his strength by 19 times, and was about to enter the 7th rate. He would definitely be able to suppress Ling Han's next heavenly venerate symbol. Oh, this foundation isn't all that impressive. Ling Han shook his head. As he punched out, his skull, pelvis, arm, and leg bones all lit up at the same time. There was a symbol flashing on each of them. Although they were blurry, they exuded a supreme domineering aura. Boom! As he punched out, 4 divine beasts appeared. They took solid form, and were incredibly terrifying. What? Rong Yang was shocked. The current Ling Han had suddenly increased his strength to a height that he could only look up to. To say nothing of Ling Han, even a single divine beast had the battle prowess to crush him. Fuck. Ling Han had actually also grasped combination symbols. Moreover, his level was far above his own. Just 4 symbols had already increased his strength by more than 30 times, creating an absolute suppression over him. Under a series of heavy blows, Rong Yang finally couldn't hold on any longer. He was violently beaten down from the sky. Pung! He landed heavily on the ground. His body directly smashed out a deep pit in the ground, and there was no bottom at all. Ling Han's figure landed, and the 4 symbols disappeared. His gaze turned to 9-5 heavenly venerate. 9-5's heart involuntarily shrank. He knew that Ling Han was incomparably monstrous, and this was also the reason why he had to kill Ling Han no matter what. However, he had never imagined that Ling Han's momentum would be so strong. Not only had Ling Han surpassed him, but he could even easily crush Rong Yang, who was only 4 steps away. What to do? What to do? Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. In this life, he had also experienced countless crises. Long before he had become a heavenly venerate, his life had not always been smooth sailing. However, he had always relied on his strength, wits, and luck to resolve these crises. Now his strength was far inferior, and his wits were probably useless. Would Ling Han listen to his excuses? He could only rely on luck. But luck was too unreliable. Could it be that a 5th-step heavenly venerate would suddenly appear now and force Ling Han to stop? There was no 5th-step heavenly venerate, but there really was a 6th-step heavenly venerate. However, Lin Xiaoyang clearly had no intention of appearing. Ling Han! Pung! Rong Yang shot out from the ground. His arms and legs were broken, and his entire body was bathed in blood. However, his fighting spirit soared into the sky. He glared angrily at Ling Han, showing no intention of stopping the battle. Ling Han turned his head and glanced at him. You are also deceived by someone, and this person is none other than him. He pointed at 9-5. 9-5 snorted. I don't know what you're talking about. Ling Han, don't be too presumptuous. Lord Rong is the only son of the 6th-step heavenly venerate, Rong Tianyu. He wanted to use the name of a 6th-step heavenly venerate to suppress Ling Han. Rong Yang angrily rebuked. This is my battle. Don't mention my father. Ling Han laughed heartily and said to Rong Yang, you can still be considered a tough nut to crack. I'll give you some respect. His figure scuttled forward and charged at 9-5. Your opponent is me. Rong Yang did not appreciate the gesture and intercepted Ling Han. 9-5 hurriedly retreated. How could he possibly be a match for Ling Han? Ling Han directly activated the 4 symbols talisman. Pung! He sent Rong Yang flying with a punch. Then, he swiftly caught up to 9-5 and stretched out a hand to grab the other party's neck. 9-5 almost went mad with anger. He was a heavenly venerate, and a 3rd-step one at that. Yet, Ling Han had actually used the method of an eagle catching a chick to bully him. How disdainful was Ling Han! However, he did not dare to say a word. He hurriedly used the opportunity created by Rong Yang's attack to escape. However, the difference in strength was too great. How could he escape? A massive force quickly assailed him, causing the hair on his back to stand on end. I can't escape. He told himself in his heart that he had no choice but to turn around and fight. Boom! He took out his Heavenly Venerate treasure and activated a Heavenly Venerate symbol. However, this was one of the 7 legendary symbols, and it could only increase his strength by 4 times. To say nothing of resisting the 4 symbols talisman. Even if Ling Han did not use any secret techniques, and only blasted out the strength of a 4th step Heavenly Venerate, he was still not a match for 9-5. Pung! His counterattack immediately collapsed. Ling Han's large hand was practically unaffected, and it had already gripped his neck. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2843. He had once been one of the 3 big shots of the celestial realm, but now, he was being carried around like a dead dog. This caused the Heavenly Venerable Original Birth, Ji Wuming, and the others to sigh. However, the large black dog clapped his hands in praise. He had wanted to see this scene for a long time. Ling Han! Rongyang roared loudly. No matter what, the 9-5 was his subordinate, and now that he was being humiliated like this, he felt extremely embarrassed. However, he had been beaten up so viciously by Ling Han, so he actually felt extremely embarrassed. Ling Han shook his head. Don't be agitated. Let's see what this guy has to say first. The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable smirked. Ling Han, I only regret that I didn't kill you earlier. That's why today's disaster has occurred. Rongyang faltered slightly. With his intelligence, he could tell from the 9-5 Heavenly Venerable's words that the 2 of them had known each other for a long time, and that there was a grudge between them. He thought about it more carefully. Could it be that Rong Xingquan had come here because the 9-5 Heavenly Venerable had instigated him to kill him? Did you instigate Rong Xingquan to come here? He asked the 9-5 Heavenly Venerable. The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable had already thrown caution to the wind. He only laughed loudly as he glared angrily at Ling Han. Junior, I had countless opportunities to kill you, but I was too weak. I thought that you were only an ant, and I couldn't be bothered to act personally. I'm very sorry to disappoint you, Ling Han said calmly. Come, since you have no intention of reflecting on your actions, I won't waste any more time. I'll send you on your way. Ling Han, one day, you will understand that there is always someone stronger than you. You are definitely not the most powerful person in the world. The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable seemed to be cursing him, and tears of blood flowed from his eyes. He was filled with hatred. Ling Han was only the most insignificant ant in the celestial realm. Yet now, he had turned the tables and suppressed him. He was filled with indignation and regret. Ling Han humphed, and a terrifying power surged from his right hand. Pung! The 9-5 Heavenly Venerable was instantly blasted into a rain of blood. The Heavenly Venerable had died, and heaven and earth did not move. It was as if a cat or dog had died. Huh! Ling Han was startled. Ling Han! Rongyang scolded angrily. He hadn't even investigated the matter clearly, so how could you kill him? Ling Han, who was deep in thought, ignored Rongyang. He only waved his hand and swept the remnant soul of 9-5 towards Rongyang. If there were any problems, he would explore them himself. Rongyang wanted to say something. However, after some consideration, he extended his right hand and grabbed Heavenly Venerate 9-5's remnant soul. Then he started to flip through his memories. His expression became uglier and uglier, because he had already flipped to the part where the 9-5 Holy Venerate encouraged Rong Xingquan to go to Ling City, as well as the reason why the 9-5 Holy Venerate became enemies with Ling Han and the others. This made him realize that the Rong clan had really been used by the 9-5. Damn it! He wished he could kill the 9-5 Heavenly Venerate again. A mere 3rd-step Heavenly Venerate actually dared to toy with a 6th-step Heavenly Venerate. He was too bold. Ling Han, although this matter was instigated by this evil person, you did indeed kill a member of the Rong clan. You have to give the Rong clan an explanation for this matter. He suppressed his anger. This matter was indeed instigated by Rong Xingquan, but there was no reason for the Rong clan's members to die in vain. Ling Han ignored him. as his body was undergoing an intense transformation. When he had just killed the ninth five holy venerate, Ling Han had discovered a powerful force surging into his body. He had sensed it carefully and realized that it was the spirit essence of the ninth five holy venerate. He was very surprised. He had not cultivated any evil techniques or demonic techniques, so how could he have devoured the life essence of the ninth five holy venerate? He had never heard of anyone possessing this ability after attaining the second step. This transformation was too sudden and strange. As a result, he was not in the mood to pay attention to Rong Yang. Instead, he focused on the changes in his body. The life essence of the ninth five holy venerate had become endless nutrients, rapidly increasing the planar power in each of his cells. If he could continue to improve like this, he would probably be able to break through to the third step in a few thousand years. Ling Han was not too happy. This kind of ability surprised him, and he even felt a kind of fear. This was equivalent to devouring other holy venerates and turning them into one's own nutrients. The speed at which one's cultivation increased was astonishing. If this was easy to replicate, wouldn't the whole world go crazy? Holy venerates hunted holy venerates and blood flowed like rivers. Soon, there were only a few of the strongest holy venerates left in the origin world. Ling Han! Rong Yang roared angrily. Ling Han had actually dared to ignore him and step on him. Hadn't he only defeated him temporarily? What was there to be proud of? Ling Han came back to his senses and said, "How do you want me to explain it to you? Go to the Rong clan and kowtow to apologize." Rong Yang said. Ling Han immediately snorted disdainfully. "Are you stupid? Don't you know that Rong Xingquan came here on his own? Moreover, he also killed a member of the Ling clan. In that case, I should also ask the Rong clan for an explanation." Rong Yang was furious. How could the life of a mere servant compare to the life of a direct descendant of the Rong clan? "Hee, let me be the peacemaker." With a long laugh, Lin Xiaorong appeared, and Lin Piaoshui followed behind him. "Greetings, Lord Lin." "Greetings, Senior Lin." Ling Han and Rong Yang both bowed. This was a sixth-step holy venerable. Who could not treat him with respect? Lin Xiaorong raised his hand and said, "This matter was indeed provoked by Rong Xingquan first. With his character, even death cannot wipe out his crimes." Rong Yang wanted to defend himself, but when Lin Xiaoyang's gaze swept over, he immediately shut his mouth. In front of a sixth-step holy venerable, he had no right to talk back. Although he was unwilling, since Lin Xiaoyang had already sealed the coffin, he had no right to say anything else, unless his father came in person. "Rong Yang, come." Lin Xiaoyang waved at Rong Yang. Rong Yang had no choice but to leave with Lin Xiaoyang. Lin Piaoshui winked at Ling Han, turned around, and left with her father. Ling Han. As soon as the three holy venerables left, the Empress and the others all gathered around. They were all happy that Ling Han advanced a step further, allowing Ling City to possess the battle prowess of a fourth-step holy venerable. In this chaotic world, it was even safer. Ling Han really wanted to ask someone about the ability he suddenly possessed, but the Empress had just advanced to the second step and hadn't killed a holy venerable, so it was naturally impossible for her to know if he possessed such an ability. It wasn't like he could test it just because he wanted to. Now, go find a holy venerable for the Empress to kill? Ling Han actually missed the foreign battlefield. If he was still fighting with madness now, then the speed of his cultivation wouldn't be too fast. As long as he could cross the barrier of the tier, it wouldn't take too long for him to reach the seventh step. He instinctively felt that this matter couldn't be told to outsiders, or else there might be huge problems. He temporarily put this question aside, and after asking, he found out that Ling Xi had already set off 2 days ago to various planes to collect the core power and embark on her own path to Holy Venerable. Hunyao, on the other hand, was still in seclusion, seemingly unwilling to come out until she reached the third step. Everything temporarily returned to peace. With Lin Xiaoyang's appearance to mediate, the Rong family didn't come to settle old scores because of Rong Xingquan's death. However, after tens of thousands of years, Rong Yang once again appeared in Ling City. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 2844. Duel. Ling Han looked at Rong Yang in surprise. He hadn't expected Rong Yang to invite him to a duel. Rong Yang nodded. Yes, a duel. There are about a dozen of us. And we will suppress our realms to a certain level before we fight. Whoever can stand until the end will be the champion. Before the duel, we will cut off a celestial venerable symbol, and the champion will be able to keep these symbols for himself. Ling Han was surprised. This was a really big bet. However, would he have any opponents at the same level as him? Wasn't this just giving him a treasure? Ling Han looked at Rong Yang. Although his grudge with the Rong clan had been resolved by Lin Xiaoyang, his relationship with the Rong clan wasn't exactly friendly. Why would Rong Yang push such a good thing to him? Rong Yang guessed Ling Han's doubts and smiled bitterly. I don't have any intention of making a fortune out of you. It's just that recently, a monster suddenly appeared. No one at the same level as him was a match for him, and I lost miserably. Oh! Ling Han was slightly surprised. Although Rong Yang wasn't the strongest at the same level, he had absorbed a lot of planar power at the first step. In a situation where they were at the same level, there shouldn't be many who could defeat him. Could it be Xian Qihu or Wu Haoyang? Rong Yang shook his head. If it was them, we wouldn't be stupid enough to fight with them. That person is called Meng Dong. No one knows where he came from, but in the second step, he can be said to be invincible. So you came to find me? Ling Han asked Rong Yang. Ling Han, you were able to fight against someone at the fourth step when you were at the second step, but this might not be an ability that only you can have, Rong Yang said seriously. In a fight at the same level, we weren't a match for Meng Dong. Later, he relaxed the restrictions and allowed us to fight him at the third step, but we still lost miserably. In the end, he allowed us to fight him at the fourth step, but most of us still lost. Just like that, we were tricked by him 3 times, and each of us lost 3 heavenly venerate symbols. Ling Han couldn't help but be moved. Rong Yang said that they had more than a dozen people. If Meng Dong could obtain more than a dozen Empyrean symbols each time he won, then 3 times, he should have at least 40 to 50. His lucky chances were already astonishing enough, but now he only had 14 Empyrean symbols, and 7 of them were the 7 legendary symbols. Almost every Empyrean had 1, so it didn't count. They were both at the second step, but the gap was huge. Let's go. We have to go. He immediately moved. He wanted to see for himself, how could there be such a monster other than himself? Ling Han did not call the Empress, Hun Yo, and the others, and directly set off with Rong Yang. He was not afraid of Rong Yang tricking him, because he could travel freely in the origin world. Who could stop him? Of course, Frenzy was an opponent that could not be ignored. It seemed to be against him, and now he would always meet it in the void. After traveling for a few months, they came to a large mountain. There were many people gathered here, and all of them were Empyreans. Ling Han was surprised. The world was chaotic now, and even Empyreans were in danger. How could there be so many people running out so openly? However, after Rong Yang said it, Ling Han understood why. Because the Empyreans here all had great backgrounds. If it wasn't their father or grandfather who was a 5th step or 6th step Empyrean, then their master or grandmaster were elites of this level. As long as there was no force that could catch them all in one fell swoop, then as long as one escaped, those Empyreans would unite for revenge. And which force could resist? Of course, once someone was alone, it was hard to say. Ling Han saw many heroic young Empyreans who had only cultivated for 1 or 2 epochs. And there were even younger ones who had only cultivated for tens of billions of years, but had already advanced 2 or even 3 steps, truly extraordinary. He couldn't help but sigh. Although the world was chaotic, it also gave birth to many geniuses. However, didn't they say that there would only be a dozen or so people gambling? There were at least 100 people here. Even Rong Yang was a bit startled. There had indeed only been a dozen or so people gambling here. Most likely, many people went to find helpers. They are not willing to be deceived by Meng Dong, and want to regain some face. Some of them even have designs on the Empyrean symbols on Meng Dong's body. Rong Yang guessed. Ling Han nodded. There were at least 40 to 50 Empyrean symbols. Even he was a little tempted. Should he kill them and rob them? Rong Yang, Is this the helper you invited? A yellow-robed young man walked over. He was tall and slender, and the aura he exuded had reached the 4th step. Rongyang nodded. He is Ling Han. Ling Han? The yellow-robed young man revealed a look of surprise. The Ling Han who repeatedly broke records in the extraterritorial battlefield? That's him. Rongyang nodded. Haha, brother Ling, I am Qiu Jian. The yellow-robed young man cupped his hands towards Ling Han. I've heard a lot about you. Since others were polite, Ling Han naturally wouldn't be arrogant. He nodded and returned the greeting. Brother Qiu Jian. As they spoke, they attracted the attention of the surrounding people. Many people were very interested when they heard that the legendary Ling Han had arrived. After all, the records that Ling Han had created back then were truly unprecedented, and it was very likely that no one would be able to surpass them in the future. However, some newly ascended Empyreans were disdainful of Ling Han. They had only heard of Ling Han's legend and hadn't seen it with their own eyes. They had a skeptical attitude and believed that they were the strongest. Ling Han, do you dare to fight? Someone immediately challenged Ling Han. This was a 2nd step Empyrean, and he was indeed extraordinary. He had cultivated for less than 10 billion years, and had already reached this step. In terms of speed alone, he was countless streets ahead of Ling Han. Thus he looked down on Ling Han. He had cultivated for more than an epoch to reach the 2nd step. He was too weak. I also want to fight with this legendary genius, another Empyrean said. He was only at the 1st step, but he could suppress his cultivation level and fight again. The difference in cultivation level wasn't a big problem. Me too. Another Empyrean stepped forward. This time, he was a 2nd step Empyrean. Challengers stepped forward one by one. There were more than a dozen of them. They all wanted to step on Ling Han's shoulders. After all, Ling Han had left behind a legend in the extraterritorial battlefield. Ling Han smiled. The main character hadn't arrived yet, but someone was already giving him an Empyrean symbol. He deliberately revealed a difficult expression. I'm just one person, but there are more than a dozen of you. His hesitation made everyone think that he was afraid. It's not a group fight. Let's fight one by one. Right, we won't bully you. Do you dare? The previous challengers all wanted to provoke Ling Han into fighting. Ling Han considered it over and over again before nodding. All right. The challengers were all overjoyed. However, Ling Han continued to say, however, I'm afraid that my divine might will scare you all away. Hence, whoever wants to challenge me and make a wager with me, please step forward. Take out your heavenly venerate mark first. I'm afraid that you won't fight when the time comes. This was his true intention. Otherwise, if he blew up a gambling fighter with a single punch, would others still dare to fight with him? Who's afraid? Those challengers all raised their necks and said. Chapter 2846. Meng Dong glanced at Zhuang Bai and smiled. You're at the peak of the 4th step. I'm not your match for now. This was the truth, but Zhuang Bai couldn't feel happy hearing it. Wasn't this saying that he would be able to overtake Zhuang Bai very soon? He was furious that the 2nd step was so disrespectful in front of the 4th step. But so what? Although Meng Dong wasn't as strong as him, the difference in strength wasn't that great. At most he could defeat Meng Dong, but he couldn't seriously injure him. Of course Meng Dong had the right to be arrogant in front of him. Meng Dong, is what you just said true? Asked a 3rd step heavenly venerable. Of course, said Meng Dong proudly. All right, count me in. The 3rd step heavenly venerable stepped forward. Count me in too. Another 3rd step heavenly venerable stepped forward. Me too. One by one, there were soon 10 people who stepped forward. All right, let's fight. Meng Dong took out 10 stones sealed with heavenly venerable symbols and tossed them to Zhuang Bai. The 10 3rd step heavenly venerables also cut out a heavenly venerable symbol from their spiritual seas and used a special stone to seal it before handing it to Zhuang Bai. If they won, then each of them would get a heavenly venerable symbol. If they lost, then all 10 heavenly venerable symbols would go to Meng Dong. Let's begin, said Zhuang Bai. The 10 3rd step heavenly venerables immediately attacked, but they were quickly shocked. Meng Dong's combat strength had far surpassed their expectations. He had the absolute upper hand the moment the battle started. They fought back, using all sorts of powerful moves. But in the face of absolute strength, all of that was useless. Soon, they were defeated one after another. Thanks. Meng Dong smiled. The 10 third-step Heavenly Venerables could only turn ashen. 10 third-step Heavenly Venerables couldn't even win. What else could they say? Is there anyone else? Meng Dong smiled. No one answered. There weren't many 4th-step Heavenly Venerables who could suppress Meng Dong. And Meng Dong obviously wouldn't agree to a bet with such an expert. Ha ha ha. If no one else wants to fight, then I don't need to come here next time. Meng Dong shook his head, his gaze filled with disdain. Everyone was extremely unhappy. All of them could be considered youths who had achieved success. Now that they were being looked down upon like this, it would be strange if they felt comfortable. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but you're all trash. Meng Dong laughed. I'll fight you. A voice rang out. Meng Dong turned around and looked at the person who had spoken. He couldn't help being astonished. Second step. Haha, are you bursting with confidence, or did your head get kicked by a donkey? Ling Han Ling Dong Chun said. He sat Dong at him at Meng and said. Dong Chun, Long Chun and said. Chun and you. Dong I Tian. At Long at. And said he. At I, Z Long, Meng Zt. ZZ, Long Chun Dong Tian Long he. I he Long Ji Long Ling Han nodded. Yes. That's why I think you can be my opponent. Meng Dong's eyes narrowed. How could someone who could cultivate to Sky Sovereign be so stupid? So Ling Han knew that he had the strength to suppress 3 Heavenly Venerables, but he still dared to challenge him. He was definitely a peerless genius. Okay, let's bet. He threw out 10 stones with Sky Sovereign symbols. Old rules 1 to 10. I don't need to take advantage of you. 10 to 10. Ling Han also threw out 10 stones. Everyone was shocked by Ling Han's heroism. Of course, there were a few people who thought that Ling Han was stupid. He could clearly fight 10 at once. What they didn't know was that Ling Han was so confident in himself. What was the difference between taking out 10 symbols and 1? So confident. Meng Dong narrowed his eyes. If people don't have confidence in themselves, then what's the point? Ling Han asked. Haha, that's right. People should have more confidence in themselves. Meng Dong laughed. Then let's fight. Both of them handed their Sky Sovereign symbols to Zhuangbai and rose into the air, standing hundreds of feet apart. This distance was nothing to a Sky Sovereign. They could cover it with the raise of their hand. I hope you have the strength and don't disappoint me. Meng Dong said. Same to you. Ling Han also said. Then take this. Meng Dong moved and pressed a palm towards Ling Han. Pung! Ling Han and his fists collided. A powerful shock wave surged, and both of them retreated. They were almost equally matched. In an instant, both of their expressions turned solemn. His strength was no less than his own. Ling Han was shocked. As expected, he wasn't the only one who could fight 2 levels higher. This Meng Dong was even more powerful than the Empress, because the Empress couldn't fight 2 levels higher. What he didn't know was that Meng Dong was even more shocked than he was, because Meng Dong's cultivation was at the peak of Step 2. Although it was hard to tell who was stronger, one was at the early stage of Step 2, and the other was at the peak of Step 2. Wasn't this enough to explain the problem? Interesting. Meng Dong looked at Ling Han, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. He knew that he had lost to Ling Han, but he wasn't discouraged. This was because the competition between Sky Sovereigns wasn't just about cultivation and strength, but also about mastery of secret techniques and symbols. Therefore, although he and Ling Han were at the same level of strength, if they both went all out, the gap between them would suddenly widen. He was by nature decisive. He immediately activated his Sky Sovereign symbol and his secret technique. With a roar, he took a deep breath. The secret power between heaven and earth was mobilized by him, and then he spewed it out. Xiao xiao xiao. Countless weapons shot out of his mouth, flying towards Ling Han. Fuck. Ling Han's face immediately darkened. He didn't care whether Meng Dong was doing this on purpose or not. But was he spitting at him? If you want to fight, then fight. Is it really okay for you to spit at me like this? Bastard! Ling Han roared in fury. He charged towards Meng Dong. and as he shot out a punch, the Fury Fist had already been delivered. Furthermore, he had added the 14th talisman, increasing his power by 29 times. Pung 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 pung. Countless weapons were destroyed by Ling Han, and he displayed an invincible stance. Meng Dong couldn't help but be shocked. This battle prowess was truly domineering and ferocious. Even he had to retreat. He was very decisive, and he immediately retreated, not wanting to face Ling Han head-on. However, he continued to spit at Ling Han. Golden swords, silver spears, halberds, short sabers, all of them attacked Ling Han. Using saliva to disgust people. I've never seen someone as shameless as you, Ling Han said angrily. Meng Dong's face also darkened when he heard this. What did he mean by using saliva to disgust people? This was his Sky Sovereign technique, called the Art of 10,000 Soldiers. It was an ultimate technique that he had comprehended himself. He didn't need to use his hands or feet to use it, and it could be said to be extremely practical. Of course, if he spat too much, it was inevitable that a bit of saliva would also come out. But how much was that? Moreover, every hair and skin on a Sky Sovereign's body was a supreme treasure, and his saliva was even more nutritious. Its fragrance was like a great medicine, so how could it possibly be disgusting? Damn! He was also angry, and he spat even more fiercely. No, he spat out weapons even more fiercely. Chapter 2847. Meng Dong was very powerful. He had such capital, possessing the strength of a 4-step elite at 2nd step. Looking at the entire origin world, how many prodigies like this were there? Did Lin Yulian, Xian Chihu, and Wu Haoyang have such strength in the past? Such a prodigy should be famous in the world. Yet he seemed to have suddenly crawled out from some crack in a rock. No one knew his background, only knew that he was called Meng Dong. Perhaps Meng Dong wasn't his real name, but facing Ling Han, he was at a disadvantage, and was repeatedly pushed back by Ling Han's furious fists. Kill! He roared angrily, continuously spitting out all kinds of weapons from his mouth. They were very frightening, able to instantly kill even a 3-step heavenly venerable. But Ling Han simply smashed the weapons with a punch. He drew out a precious tool, which was an ancient mirror. 7 symbols pulsed on it, emitting a blazing light. Ling Han couldn't help but close his eyes. This light was very destructive to the naked eye, and even a powerful heavenly venerable like him couldn't look directly at it. Taking advantage of this chance, Meng Dong charged over, smashing a palm at Ling Han's head. Chaotic chi descended, and he looked like a demon god. This heavenly venerable treasure tool wasn't a sharp weapon, but a support type, showing how strong Meng Dong was in his own strength. A heavenly venerable treasure tool could be used as a support. His own strength could crush everything. Ling Han roared, and didn't draw out the divine demon sword, just swinging his fists in a fierce attack. From a certain perspective, the battle prowess of his furious fist was even above that of the divine demon sword, because he could only use force to slash with the divine demon sword. But the furious fist was a secret technique that he had cultivated, and the increase in battle prowess was greater. Under the illumination of that blazing light, he really couldn't see anything. This light not only made him unable to open his eyes, but also blinded his divine sense. If it didn't have such an effect, this support-type precious tool would be too useless. He swung his fists completely based on his battle instincts. His skin could feel the strong wind, and his sense of danger allowed him to make the most reasonable response. Pung pung pung. The two of them clashed fiercely, using their full strength with every move, wanting to defeat each other. In the surroundings, everyone was nervous, and their feelings were incomparably complicated. They hoped that Meng Dong would lose, but if Meng Dong lost, it would mean that Ling Han's monstrous talent was even above Meng Dong's, and this was even more unacceptable. However, no matter how complicated their feelings were, it was impossible for it to affect the battle situation in the slightest. Ling Han gradually gained the upper hand. Come, I underestimated you, Meng Dong said, his eyes flashing. Ling Han smiled faintly. I've overestimated you. With just this bit of strength, you're not worthy of being my opponent. How arrogant, Meng Dong sneered. and the runes on his body suddenly disappeared. In their place, 3 runes lit up on his chest, causing his combat strength to soar. Hong, he struck out with his palm, and heaven and earth trembled. Combination symbols. Ling Han said casually. That's right, it can increase your combat strength by 32 times, Meng Dong said proudly. Ling Han laughed. You're not the only one who has grasped combination symbols. He also dispersed the 9th rune, and in its place was the 4 symbols rune. His strength also began to soar. 39 times. Before, Meng Dong's combat strength was slightly inferior to Ling Han's, and now that there was a huge difference in their strength, he was naturally inferior to Ling Han. Originally, he had only been at a slight disadvantage, but now he was clearly at a disadvantage. Anyone could see this with a glance. If this continued, Meng Dong was going to lose. Not bad, you're really not bad. Come, I'm going to use this big move on you. Meng Dong laughed loudly, and he suddenly stretched out his right hand, grabbing at Ling Han. This hand grew endlessly, as if it had transformed into a world of its own. Heavenly Yuan destruction, he called out in his heart. Hong, the large hand pressed down, and everyone felt a boundless pressure in their hearts, as if their souls were about to be torn apart. What kind of technique was this? How could it make even a heavenly venerable feel so oppressed? Ling Han also felt an indescribable feeling of discomfort, and even his head was about to split open. But in the next instant, a wave of power suddenly surged out of his body, completely eliminating this oppressive feeling. He didn't have time to wonder where this wave of power came from. He hurriedly punched out, meeting that large hand. Pung! This large hand was blasted apart by his punch. Putting aside that oppressive feeling, this move was only very strong, but not ridiculously strong. Meng Dong revealed a look of disbelief, and even stopped his hand. He couldn't accept that his attack would be useless. But it was only a moment later that he came to a sudden realization. So you're also? Ling Han was surprised and said, why don't you finish what you're saying? Meng Dong nodded but said, haha, no wonder you don't know, because you haven't awakened yet. There's no rush. When the day comes that you understand, there naturally won't be any need for me to explain. What's the meaning of all this nonsense? Ling Han's brows furrowed. Speak clearly. Haha, this time I'll let you win, little brother. Meng Dong abandoned the battle and directly turned to leave. With a single step, he crossed 1,000 miles, and then his voice slowly drifted over. I admit defeat. Previously, all the words he had said had been directly transmitted into Ling Han's mind through divine sense. Only the last 3 words, I admit defeat, had been spoken directly through his mouth, and had reached everyone's ears. Meng Dong had lost. Although everyone had expected this, they were still somewhat surprised to hear Meng Dong admit it himself, because with his current state, he could actually still hold on for a very long time. Moreover, once he made it through Ling Han's eruption period, who knew what kind of changes would occur in the battle? Perhaps, when the next Empyrean symbol appeared, Meng Dong's would be even stronger. Ling Han stood solemnly without moving. He was thinking about what Meng Dong had said. What did he mean? From his tone, the two of them seemed to know each other, and were on the same path. But in all honesty, Ling Han didn't think that he had ever seen Meng Dong. Strange, everything that had happened recently had been far too strange. He had inexplicably lost control of his own divine soul. When he had broken through to the second step, he had actually entered the void, and he had even encountered a frenzy. Moreover, he had also gained the ability to swallow the life essence of the Empyrean of Death. Just now, he had even produced an inexplicable energy within his body. He had no way of explaining all of this, but perhaps Meng Dong would know. Ling Han didn't chase after him. Meng Dong's strength wasn't much weaker than his, so he couldn't force him to answer. Moreover, it was clear that Meng Dong had no intention of taking the initiative to tell him anything. He turned and walked towards Zhuang Bai, collecting the Empyrean symbols he had won first. Everyone's eyes were red with envy. That was 20 Empyrean symbols. Some people wanted to attack, but they forcibly restrained themselves. They couldn't break the rules here. Otherwise, would there still be people willing to gamble with him in the future? Ling Han first sat to the side and completely refined the 20 Empyrean symbols. After a long time they would dissipate. The others began to gamble with him. Without the abnormal Meng Dong, there was finally no one to disturb them. Of course, now that Ling Han had replaced them, there was probably no one willing to gamble with him. Chapter 2848. Since there was no one else to fight, Ling Han could only helplessly return. Rong Yang expressed his great gratitude to him. He had resolved the great threat that was Meng Dong, and from now on, the Rong clan's grievances with Ling Han and Ling Chung were written off. Ling Han knew that this was because his potential was too terrifying, so the Rong clan gave him this face. Of course, if he did not have the support of the Lin clan behind him, they would definitely have crushed him to death. Because they could not crush him to death now, and were wary of his future strength, they might as well make peace and turn enemies into friends. Ling Han did not mind. In any case, the main culprits, the 9-5 Heavenly Venerable and Rong Xingquan, had already been killed, so turning enemies into friends was fine. In the future, remember to call me if there are such things as gambling battles, Ling Han said smilingly. Rong Yang's expression darkened. If he really brought Ling Han to a few more gambling battles, he would definitely be scolded as a scammer, just like Meng Dong before, harming many people. Of course, he said perfunctorily, but he had already made up his mind. He definitely could not bring Ling Han to participate in this matter. Ling Han did not give up. Sometimes if I have something to do, I can ask my wife to go. Rong Yang's expression darkened even more. It was not that he had not fought with the Empress before. Though she was a second step, she could match a third step opponent. She was also a super freak. He sent off Ling Han as if he was a plague. It was better to have less contact with this kind of scammer in the future. Just like that, Ling Han returned to Ling City. On the surface, he was all smiles. This time, he had obtained 20 Heavenly Venerable tier symbols, which could be said to be a great harvest. But there was a hidden worry in the depths of his heart. What had happened to his body? He did not tell anyone about this matter. He began to cultivate in seclusion, digesting those 20 Heavenly Venerable tier symbols. But after refining them, he discovered that 3 of them were duplicates. So he immediately separated them and passed them to the Empress. In this way, he now had as many as 35 Heavenly Venerable tier symbols. But the newly obtained symbols were all of the 9th rate. A bunch of misers. However, after going all out, he managed to expand the 5 combination symbols to 9. If he were to circulate them together, his strength would increase by 26 times, and he would enter the 7th stream. Not bad at all. Ling Han nodded. The 9th grade symbol also had its advantages, which was that no one paid much attention to it. It was the most widely circulated symbol, and it might be the first combination symbol that he had collected. Thinking about it, if 9 pills could increase one's battle prowess by 26 times, then how many times would one's battle prowess increase if one gathered all 111 pills? 10,000 Ling Han couldn't help but look forward to it, but he didn't know how long it would take for this day to come. People weren't stupid. He had won every battle, so who would want to bet with him? No wonder so many people have embarked on the path of killing and robbing. There's no need to follow the rules here. Taking what others have painstakingly comprehended and turning it into your own is indeed the fastest way to improve yourself. Right now, I can refine other Empyreans and seize their cultivation bases and runes. To me, this is an enormous temptation. I can't help but want to take shortcuts. But can forcefully snatching other people's cultivation bases really help me climb to the peak? Ling Han felt that this wasn't too safe. What he had seized was inferior to what he had cultivated himself. Perhaps his cultivation base and strength would only soar for a while, but in the long run, the hidden danger of his unstable foundation would be exposed. I'll take it one step at a time. He spent tens of thousands of years to completely grasp all the newly obtained Empyrean runes and turn them into his own. Only then did he come out of seclusion. In the outside world, the Rong family had already formed an alliance with the Lin family, but the Ying family's words had yet to be decided. The Ying family's appetite was very big, and they actually wanted the Lin family's precious daughter to marry into the Ying family. Even Lin Xiaoyang couldn't make the decision on this matter. Lin Yulian was the most doted on by Lin Luo. If she wasn't willing, who would dare to force her? When the news spread, everyone said that the Ying family was thick-skinned. Lin Yulian was the strongest prodigy throughout the ages, and advancing to the 6th step was only a matter of time. In the future, her limit might even be the 7th step. The Ying family was just a 6th-step force, yet they actually dared to have thoughts about the future 7th-step powerhouse? How thick-skinned. Therefore, the alliance with the Ying family had been dragged on. On the other hand, the matter of Lin Piaoxue and Rong Yang becoming a couple was also proven to be hearsay. Who was Lin Xiaoyang? He was a child of the 7th step, and he himself was also at the 6th step. Would he be so narrow-minded as to use his own daughter to exchange for an alliance? Because the Lin family was the core of this alliance, and Lin Luo was also at the 7th step, this alliance was called the Lin Alliance. Speaking of which, Ling Han and the others were also members of the Lin Alliance. It was just that their strength seemed insignificant. Empyreans were still falling, but because most of the Empyreans were now huddling together, the number of deaths had been greatly reduced. The various alliances rarely fought with each other, because if both sides were to suffer, a third party might take the opportunity to destroy them, and their efforts would go to the benefit of others. In this way, the world was returning to peace. The world was always like this, chaotic and peaceful and chaotic again. Ling Han began a long period of seclusion. Since he had nothing to do, he cultivated while trying to repair the 14th talisman. It had a 29-fold amplification, even in its incomplete state. Once it was completely repaired, it was very likely to be a 6th grade, or even 5th grade high-grade talisman. He constantly communicated with heaven and earth, extracting the energy of the hollow child to repair the 14th talisman. The progress was very slow, but it was indeed improving. The Empyrean talisman was above the rules. It was originally a method for the Empyrean to communicate with the essential power of the origin world. Of course, it could also be repaired using the 6 essential powers. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. If he reached the 7th step, he could simultaneously extract the 6 elements with a wave of his hand. The efficiency of repairing the Empyrean talisman would definitely skyrocket by many times. After 700 million years, the talisman had been repaired by half, and the amplification had reached 33 times. After another 2 billion years, it had been repaired by 3/4, and the amplification had reached 39 times. Just this alone was already on par with the 4 symbols talisman, and this was just a talisman. Shocking. Ling Han couldn't help but look forward to it. If he took 3 steps forward, would an even more powerful talisman appear on its own? After another 4 billion years, the 14th talisman was finally completely repaired, and the amplification had jumped 47 times. This was a 5th grade talisman. If he could obtain a few more 5th grade talismans, how astonishing would the effect be when they were combined? He really wanted to find a high-level Empyrean and have a gamble. Ling Han sighed ruefully, but his present battle prowess could barely match the peak stage of the 4th step. If he encountered someone at the 5th step, he would definitely be defeated, so it was better not to give gifts. When he came out of seclusion, he discovered that Hunyou had already broken through to the 3rd step, and the Empress had also refined the 3 Empyrean talismans he had given her. What made him even more surprised was that his daughter had actually returned so fast. At the time, he had spent an epoch to extract the power of 999 planes, reaching the limit. Later, he shattered the power core, and only then was he able to advance a step further, transforming his body into the embryonic form of an origin world, opening up a wider path. Why had Ling Shi reached the limit after cultivating for only a few billion years? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. for being a part of this adventure.